All right, so I don't know why I want to do this, but since you guys seem to have loved my previous video on the King of Bad Faith just so much, we're going to be returning to that topic and watching a video he has on watching Michael Knowles take a political compass test. And yeah, I know, this is us watching somebody watch somebody and commenting on them commenting on somebody. So we're gonna break the rules doubly here today and cringe our way through an hour and 12. Well, no, we're not gonna watch the whole hour and 12-minute long video. I've already watched the first 16 minutes, so it'll be you'll be getting my reaction on that first 16 minutes to a second viewing, if you will. But you know what? This is gonna be misery. This is gonna be genuine misery. I don't know why I'm subjecting myself to this, especially when you guys loved that previous video here. So let's just dive into it. Let's just dive right into it. No more prologue.
Folks, you're not going to believe it, but I've never actually watched a Michael Knowles video. This is Michael Knowles Takes the Political Compass quiz. It's a little bit old, but I did the same thing for Ben Shapiro, and these guys tend to be uniformly fucking stupid, so I thought it might be... Oh, wait, sorry. We're trying to pull over the Knowles fans. I was impressed by how suave and gentlemanly his sweater was, and I just wanted to hear his perspective on these political issues. Let's go.
I'm very excited to take the...
Yeah, all right. So we've already got a giant bit of bad faith here. So normally when you ascribe a political motivation to somebody, you do at least a little tiny bit of research into who they are and what they're into. And yes, this is not the second video I've ever watched by Vaush. I've watched genuinely dozens, probably into the hundreds of his videos of his content. So for those previous viewers who accused me of bad faith because I only watched one video, no, that was like the 50th video I watched of his, and now this is we're probably over 100 of his. So yeah, let's talk about some bad faith, Vaush. Doubling down is what I'm doing here. Yes, definitely doubling down.
Political compass test.
Wow.
It's become very popular because people are obsessed with themselves. They don't really care about politics or anything. They just want to answer questions about themselves for like 15 or 20 minutes.
I've said this before, but I do agree with this. I think this is generally true. People take political compass tests the same way they take horoscope tests. They just want to like get a cute little pinup they can do of themselves. They don't actually care about like the underlying political ramifications.
So listen, I'm not better than that. I'll go right in and...
Yeah, just real quick, Vaush actually gets one right. It was a softball, but he gets one right.
Do it. I remember I saw this test a while ago, and I remember it was kind of a left-wing thing, like I didn't agree with all the questions, but I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
So it's
Ben Shapiro did the same. Ben Shapiro did the same thing. He said he didn't agree with the questions
because they were loaded, and it was painfully obvious that they were loaded. Either the person who was putting it together was a complete idiot and didn't know how to ask these type of questions for this political compass test that would elicit a response that isn't just utterly loaded. And it was painfully obvious, Vaush. Come on.
Oh yeah, like he was like offended by the framing.
No, he wasn't.
The phraseology. That's right.
Left-right line, we know that difference. And then there's another axis, which is authoritarian or libertarian, meaning you could be a left libertarian. That would be...
I like, by the way, how fascism is apparently like authoritarian center and not authoritarian right. Hitler's right over here. Just like doesn't fall.
No, they're suggesting that left and right don't necessarily perfectly align with authoritarianism and libertarianism. Fascism is axiomatically not in line with libertarianism in the sense that a fascistic state is intent on having some sort of domination over, I won't say necessarily the means of production, but the nationalism that was exhibited by Hitler was rooted in authoritarianism. There is an obvious difference between authoritarianism and libertarianism, and that you can come from an authoritarian perspective in a manner that is left-wing, or you could come from it in a right-wing perspective. And one of the ways that they're framing this isn't that fascism is center. It's that it's just an independent axis. I mean, do you not know how graphs work? It's an independent axis. You can be a leftist fascist, I suppose, or you could be a right-wing fascist, I suppose, so long as you are extraordinarily authoritarian the way that they have this just drawn out. Again, fascism and anarchism, if we're going to describe fascism and anarchism as being opposites, then No, it's not a left-wing versus a right-wing dichotomy. There's something more to this. And they're suggesting that the way you would display this is through an independent axis. Jesus Christ.
Doesn't far right mean private, like marketization? Hitler privatized the fuck out of his whatever.
No, he didn't.
Anyway, the political compass test is really, really, really bad. I've said this before, but I don't think
True.
that there's any real such thing as like authoritarian left or libertarian.
Of course you
right.
don't. Of course you don't think that Stalin, who was a devout Leninist, or Lenin himself, who took everything Marx said to heart, and did it through utter dictation. They were obvious autocrats. They were obvious pure dictators who ruled by, again, the authority of their dictation. And they perfectly aligned with Marxism, which is the thing that everyone associates with the left. Even you're seeing it right now. Communism, collectivism. The fact that the means of productions would be collectivized under a single head. In the case of communism, that private property would be abolished and owned, and instead all property would effectively be owned by, in this case, the state. Oh my God.
And that in reality, you have a very thin spectrum along which political and economic rights tend to be heavily correlated. You generally don't afford economic rights to the politically disprivileged and vice versa.
Or libertarian, meaning you could be a left libertarian, that would be some like free love hippie, right? And then you could be a left
more like
totalitarian or authoritarian, that would be like Bernie Sanders, whose honeymoon's in the Soviet Union. Or you
Yes, there you go. The authoritarian.
Vaush, you are the one that has said on your own channel that the means by which you would like to achieve your ends is through force. You are the one that has said that there is a difference between capitalist co-ops that exists in the free market and naturally exists through voluntary exchange, and what you want out of co-ops, which obviously is some form of collectivism. Jesus Christ. I mean, it's perfectly aligned with what Bernie Sanders has talked about, using the state to collectivize the means of production through, in the end, force. Because what is the state going to use in the end, other than its force?
Bernie Sanders.
Yes, he's a left-wing
could
authoritarian.
Be a right-wing libertarian, which would be sort of like Rand Paul or Ron Paul, his father. Yep. Or you could be a right-wing authoritarian, which would be like Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun.
What? Wait, I know why he said that. Okay, first of all, Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun don't fit anywhere in this shit. Like, you have no fucking idea what the politics are of Genghis Khan. You know why he went to Genghis Khan? Because he's one of these people who pushes the narrative that Hitler was a leftist.
Hitler was a leftist. Hitler absolutely was a leftist. He definitely believed in the collectivization over the means of production. That's a huge part of why the National Socialist German Workers' Party is called the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Now, I realize that the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea or whatever is not any of those things. But there's a reason that Hitler called it the National Socialist Workers' Party National Socialist German Workers' Party. Jesus, that's a mouthful. And that was because he believed in the collectivization of the means of production. He did not believe that. He believed in the subordination of everything to the nation. This is why he is that go-to for nationalism, because everything was subordinate to the nation. He didn't believe in devolution of anything. In fact, this is why so many things that were handled in the local level and the state levels under even so much as the Weimar Republic was subsumed entirely by the Bundesrepublik.
So he couldn't say Hitler. If he had said Hitler
was a leftist.
Mussolini, or any other far-right dictator we tend to associate, he would have been
wasn't a
implying
far-right
that they were
dictator.
right-leaning. He didn't want to. So for him, a right-leaning dictator, he has to go back 1,000 years to some, yeah.
No, hold on. It's okay. It's true that it's a reach to put Genghis Khan anywhere on here, because his socioeconomic policies are largely unknown. And there's a lot of dispute over how Genghis treated the people that he conquered during his conquests. from an economic standpoint in a time where there was basically no such thing as a free market.
Yeah, that's why he couldn't do it.
I bet I'm going to be closer to Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun, but we will...
All right, just pause. We're pausing right there. Everyone look at the smile on Knowles' face. Because I've watched a bit of Knowles, not a lot, but a bit, his whole shtick, his whole bit is that he's a troll. That's his whole bit. That's the whole ethos of Michael Knowles and his show, is that it is a gigantic troll. He's having fun with the viewer at basically the viewer's expense. So he says things that are ridiculous on purpose because he's trolling with the viewer, and he's trolling with guys like Vaush, who are going to just go, what? The minute he says something that isn't perfectly aligned with his own politic.
Answer the questions and wait and see.
You have to fuck up really bad to get authoritarian right on...
Or be a giant troll.
This test, by the way. You have to, when you get to, the baby eating question, you have to answer incorrectly. You have to answer like an evil character gets played in, a fucking RPG,
Or Occam's razor, Hanlon's razor, you're just a giant troll.
No?
First question. If economic globalization is inevitable, so right off the bat, we know that this test is just bogus because globalization is not inevitable.
So he's disagreeing with the premises.
It says if, you fucking Are you fucking kidding me?
There's no point in asking the question in a practical world if the premises are just utterly useless. If gravity doesn't exist, well, if we don't have gravity to exist, how do we and then you ask a question about the realm of physics. We don't have an if for that. There's no way to engage in that hypothetical because there's just no way to conceive of the world without gravity. And when I say the world, I don't mean Earth. I mean the physical universe where one of the four primary forces ceases to exist.
It says if. Do you...
Yeah. It does say if.
Okay.
We proceed. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of
Oh, by the way, I'm just going to say this once. I have a feeling that I'm going to want to repeat it a bunch of times, but it's been speculated that the ability to understand hypotheticals is one of the greatest catalysts for human intellectual development, over the past couple hundred years. So people who can't understand or who reject hypotheticals are operating at a lower evolutionary perspective than us big brain savants in chat are.
How about those that refuse to engage in principled action? How about those who say you should submit and kowtow to the mob when it suits my political ends, and to not submit to the lynching mob when it doesn't? How about people who are completely unwilling to extend the slightest hint of the principle of charity? How about people who when it suits their political whim, will not engage with Occam's or Hanlon's razor? How about people who, when it's my political opposition, not only am I going to not engage in the principle of charity, I'm going to do the exact opposite and assume always the worst possible motivations and intents.
Transnational corporations. Well, to quote Mitt Romney, corporations are people, my friend.
Okay.
So it's hard to draw that neat distinction. This is an extremely dumb question.
It is a dumb question.
But I guess if at the heart of this question is, should economics serve purely abstract ends, or should it serve human ends, then it should serve human ends.
Okay, this is a genuinely dumb way to look at this question, but sure.
Very dumb question, so I am going to agree.
But it is a dumb
I won't
question.
Strongly agree, but I'll agree.
I feel like he's outsmarting himself here.
Okay, he is outsmarting himself.
It's pretty obvious. Assuming economic globalization is inevitable, it should serve humanity rather than the corporations. But he can't accept the idea that...
No, okay, so
how is serving corporations a higher abstract idea? It's just which material group... Oh, God.
So he's treating this as axiomatic rather than treating it as some sort of testable hypothesis. Although, if we're actually applying the laws of economics and what we learn when we have mutually consensual transactions, of course, to serve humanity, you are also going to be serving humans. Transnational corporations are nothing more than the humans and the things involved that those humans possess. And if we're serving humanity, we're serving humans and the things that they possess. So, I mean, I wouldn't know how to answer this question. Number one, because if economic globalization is inevitable, well, I mean, I guess in the sense of if we're talking about economic globalism, in the sense of we live in a global market, then it's already happened. It's not inevitable. Should economic globalization, which is the notion of the nature of the fact that we have gotten to a world level market, it should primarily serve humanity. It should serve anything necessarily. It should just do what it does. Human beings should be able to voluntarily engage in transactions so long as those transactions are mutually consensual to all parties involved. So I don't know. I mean, I would have no way to answer this question because I don't care what interests an economy actually serves, so long as there is mutual consent in the transactions.
This is the first question. Oh, God.
I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. Agree.
Okay.
Of course I would. How can your country be wrong, just like completely, totally wrong? It can go through challenging political times, it can have bad or dumb leaders, but your country itself is your country. I could no more renounce my country than I could renounce my own family. No one...
Wow, nationalism is a fucking disease.
Oh my God, Vaush. Okay, so Knowles is making a dumb argument, but it's not the argument that Vaush is insinuating that he's making. What all Michael Knowles is saying is that if you live in Guatemala and you say, I'm going to stay here and make this country better because I am staying here to make what is my country better than it actually is. And doing so, in making my country better, even if I think my country is dog shit, I'm still going to call it my country. And by doing things that allow me to make my country better, I'm supporting my country. If I abandon Guatemala and move to the United States and then abandon everything about the fact that Guatemala is my country, and now my new country is the United States, if I'm not a Guatemalan American, not a Spanish American, not a Latinx American or whatever. If I'm just an American, my country then is the United States. So in this case, it's a much deeper conversation that Knowles is having with this, is engaging this question with than what you're even willing to consider as a possibility, Vaush. Good faith engagement here. That's what we're talking about. Good faith.
Dude, holy shit. Holy God, is this how libertarians feel when they listen to sock dems? Because I just want to call him like a statist and throw him in a garbage chute. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you don't understand libertarians, man.
What a submissively minded person.
One chooses his or her country at birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Well, it's foolish to be proud of everything, because pride goeth before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. However, I suspect the way this test is using pride is like affection or loyalty or love of country.
No, it means pride. Not affection, pride.
Often what people mean when they say national pride. So I will strongly disagree with that.
So when you say you're proud of your kids' accomplishments, when people who are highly religious like Knowles say that they are Catholics like Knowles, are highly religious like Knowles, they have a different concept of pride than you do, Vaush. And he's describing to you what he understands as pride and what he thinks most people think of as pride. And most people think of having pride in my kids' accomplishments as having an affinity for my kids and their accomplishments. Being happy that they were able to achieve those accomplishments. That's not necessarily pride in the sense that Knowles is referring to it. Yeah, but I mean, you don't even want to engage with that concept of pride. Even if I were to tell you, Vaush, that I disagree with that notion of pride, that's his idea of pride. Jesus Christ.
Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Well, obviously.
You can't answer. You have to bite the bullet on this one. You have to say no.
If we're referring to the Sicilians, my swarthy skin would be something. Our ability to knead pasta is a superior quality. This is a tricky question because I suspect what they're getting at is civilization or culture. Very often you'll hear civilizations referred to as a race, but that's very different.
No, Sicilian is an ethnicity.
Oh my God, and that was a joke, you fucking retard. Oh my God. Let's roll back the tape. Here. What are we at? We are at 7:13. Let's go back to like 6:47.
You can't answer. You have to bite the bullet on this one. You have to say no.
We're referring to the Sicilians.
Oh my God, you can see he's already smiling. He's like delicately touching his face in the most ridiculous of manners.
Swarthy skin would be...
He's continuing to smile. He's holding back. You can see he's good at his jaw, Prince, or he's trying to hold his tongue, right? He's clearly making a joke here.
Pasta is a superior quality.
It's more smiling. Then he takes a breath, watch his face.
This is a tricky question because
look at his eyes. All of a sudden, it's a complete change.
Suspect what they're getting at is civilization or culture. Very often you'll hear civilizations referred to as a race, but that's very different.
No, Sicilian is an ethnicity. It's not.
He was joking about that, you stupid fuck.
It's race, black, white, Asian, race. The same definition of race everybody else uses colloquially. Are you fucking kidding me? Again, this is how you know when you're watching a very big brain individual. They try to outsmart the test that is meant to be understood by eighth.
True, he's overthinking this question. Jesus Christ, but that's as far as that goes.
The sort of essentialist biological sense of race, which is, how we're born. It's difficult to know what they're saying. Probably we should err on the side of them writing a very bad question here. And since there is neither Jew nor Greek nor slave nor bond in Christ Jesus, I have to vote against the apparent racism. I will say that I disagree with that.
Just disagree, not strongly disagree. This is the most softball answer in the fucking universe.
Vaush, if you were to apply Hanlon's razor or the principle of charity, how would you react to this? Because I agree with you. If I'm filling this out without any context, I'm probably putting down strongly disagree. However, if you're going to overread the question, which is what he's obviously doing, is there any planet where what he said, if you're overreading the question, where you're going into this knowing that these questions are loaded, where the answer isn't as straightforward as what even you and I agree on? Jesus Christ!
And he still can't. Okay, he knows exactly what he's doing here. By the way,
the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Disagree.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a meaningless
friend
question.
for a time, maybe not your friend forever.
Oh my God! See again, right there. All right, so we're looking at his face. All right, so let's see if I can get my cursor on here. You see how his chin is kind of like puckered forward, kind of like he's kind of like trying to hold back a smile. This is what Michael Knowles does. This isn't necessarily what everybody does, but this is Michael Knowles' whole shtick, is that he's a giant troll, and he's doing this for the specific purposes of enraging Vaush.
But certainly for a time, that's how politics works.
Well,
that's all
Vaush
how
and his
human
ilk.
relations work.
That's not
as well.
It's not,
military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Well, there's no such thing as international law, so I guess I strongly agree with that.
This man's brain is incredible. What the fuck do you mean there's no such thing as international law?
No, he rejects the notion that there is an actual national body, a national legislative body. He rejects the notion of those sort of things. So, if you're suggesting that treaties that are agreed upon between nations are enforceable by something other than force, other than the military might of those countries, then that's actually kind of true. Now, I kind of agree with the question, and I would also put down probably strongly agree, I'd probably put down agree, because it depends on what you would define as sometimes. Because there are plenty of places where international laws and treaties are ridiculous, and that the response to them that is appropriate is military action, such as the treaties and the military agreements that were signed and agreed to by the Axis powers in World War II. Derp.
Does he think that law is like a magical force field that only exists within the barriers of nation states? What the fuck is Interpol then? Yeah, this guy's definitely gonna get authorized.
That's a government?
This dude is a fucking lunatic.
Is that an actual government, or is that just an agreement between countries that has effectively no true enforcement mechanism other than military might?
There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. I strongly disagree with.
I know you would, my friend.
Because he's being a fucking troll. I
love these people.
His whole brand is that he's a troll. So of course he's going to say that. Jesus Christ.
The people who complain about entertainment and politics going together, as if that hadn't always been the case. If going back to ancient Greece and Pericles, when we refer to the greatest, most entertaining orations of all time, we're not talking about the most famous politician. How about Abraham Lincoln? You think that guy wasn't entertaining? He did a roadshow with Stephen Douglas.
This is half true. Politics and entertainment have always been overlapped significantly. That doesn't mean it's good. It's just a thing people do.
Give me a break. Best presidents of our recent history. Ronald Reagan, Hollywood actor. Donald Trump, reality TV host. People are ultimately divided more by class than nationality.
He has to disagree with this one. He's a fascist. He believes in class.
Yes, he's a fascist. So anyone who disagrees with the furthest left extreme of Marxism is a fascist. Remember how we keep telling you that you're the ones who are making this Overton window not only further to an extreme, but narrower? That you've just exhibited this, Vaush. You're the one that's exhibiting this right now.
Class collaborationism.
Strongly disagree. Yep. That's what Marx thought, and it turned out not to be true.
And
it did turn out to not be true.
It turned out to be 100% true. He's still right. Still mad. Marx dabbing on fascists 150 years later.
Yes, fascist, because he disagrees with the most far left extreme of a politic.
When we saw that play
good
out in the 20th
faith we're
century.
engaging with here.
That's not what you saw play out. You don't know what that is.
Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment.
What are you talking about? Why do you think why do you think the Germans had an army? Why do you think that Hitler was elected to power? Why do you think it is that when Hitler invaded everything up to Poland, he was met with no opposition? He invaded Austria, and the Austrians welcomed him. He invaded Czechoslovakia, and the Czechs, for all intents and purposes, laid down their arms and said, well, come on in. And he was a huge welcoming party in Czechoslovakia. Why do you think that Silesia just capitulated fully to the Nazis without any hint of aggression in that region? Well, it couldn't be that they thought themselves to be Germans. It couldn't be that they thought themselves to be part of the Aryan race, and that the Aryan race was the nation, right? In this case, Hitler's whole thesis was on the building of a master race, the building of a nation based on a master race, the combination in one of the Aryan race and the nation, and that everything was and that the nation was worshipped because of the fact that it was purely Aryan, that it was pure blood. Of course, that's what happened. Of course, that's what happened.
You can do two things at one time. You don't need to just pick one or the other.
And I mean, do you think the Americans who went to war in World War II, do you think they were waving the flag of their class, or were they waving the flag of the United freaking States?
But I think at the heart of this question, should we prioritize abstract economic concepts, or should we prioritize people?
Okay, this is dumb.
And I would probably prioritize people. Now,
inflation isn't an abstract concept, you fucking brainlet. It's
a
literal thing that immediately affects the purchasing power.
How much does it weigh? What's its mass? How much gravity does it experience? Tell me what its volume is. Give me any sort of metric we can use to measure inflation that is actually tangible. Give me something that is I have a letter here. This letter is tangible. In the abstract world, I'd have to abstract a version of that into that world, right? So there's a difference between tangibility and tangible things and abstract concepts. He's talking about an abstract concept. Yes, we can experience that abstract concept. And there are ways for us to determine if it exists. And there are ways that we can respond to it. And there are ways that it can affect us. But that doesn't mean that it exists in anything beyond the abstract realm as something other than an abstract concept. It's purely conceptual, even though it definitely exists.
Of real human beings.
The argument for saying inflation is more important here is because then everybody's property diminishes in value. But the argument for...
Oh, I love how you can get signs of these people's minds inner working. Not property, their purchasing power. When he thinks of inflation, he only thinks of the value of the land he owns. Because
here comes the bad faith. because he's
wealthy. But for the
wealthy.
vast majority of Americans, it would refer to their purchasing power. Because
it still refers to his purchasing power. But yeah, go ahead. Keep ascribing ill motive to Knowles.
Poor people are way more likely to spend their income on commodity consumption because they need to, relative to their income to survive, food, that sort of thing.
We're saying unemployment is the bigger issue, is that people are made to work. From the moment that our first...
Okay, he's reading into this question way too much. So that part is true. I think that's kind of part of his shtick, but at the same time, he is definitely reading way too much into this question. I don't know how I would answer it. It's kind of like putting your gun to a head and saying, does inflation matter more or does unemployment matter more? Well, the two kind of go hand in hand. So, and the things that cause those sort of things in terms of government policies go hand in hand. So I have no idea which one I would prefer.
Father Adam was in the Garden of Eden. He had a job to do. He was naming the creatures. He was gardening. Then he gets kicked out of the garden and he's got to till the soil and get his food from the sweat of his brow. So
you might say that work sets us free?
Oh my God, what a disgusting gaslight of Knowles' positions. I know it's a joke. I know it's a joke, but the only reason he would come up with that joke is, again, if he's trying to Mott and Bailey this situation and trying to trying to put words into Knowles' mouth that he's just obviously not saying.
Employment here is very important to the human person. I will disagree. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. I agree. A lot less regulation than we have right now. But
perfect answer. True. Communities have an interest in their communities. This should be, of course, but when we're talking about this sort of thing, this should be devolved in terms of policy to the lowest possible level. Sometimes to the individual level, but obviously this should be devolved. If somebody pollutes a place, then we have to have a measure in place to handle that. To handle that, because in this case, in a free market where you have mutually consensual transactions, if somebody dumps their shit on my yard, then we don't have a mutually consensual transaction. If we have a water supply, a public water supply that gets penetrated by some sort of pollution or some sort of pollutant, then the community has an interest and a vested interest and a stake in that public water supply. They are a party to that transaction which has not consented to it, or ostensibly has not consented to it. So, yes, there should be some sort of regulation in place. The regulatory hurdles right now that have to do with the environment are way too cumbersome.
But in principle, I agree. For me,
wait. America today, so you agree corporations need environmental regulation, but right now, today, in Donald Trump's administration, we've gone too far?
Yes.
You agree with the premise, but this is too far?
Yes. Have you ever been to a local zoning board? Have you ever been to a wetlands commission meeting? Have you ever talked to any civil engineers when it comes to the development of new property? Have you sat in on so much as a town council meeting in your local community in regards to the approval of an application for a development in your town? My guess is, Vaush, that you have no idea who any of your local councilmen are. So my guess is no. And yes, I am not willing to extend the principle of charity on this matter too, because honestly, I've engaged with enough of your work, Vaush, to know to have a good idea of what your involvement in local politics is, right? I have a good idea of where you stand on that matter, as opposed to you, who have never seen a Knowles video.
What regulation are you limiting them at? Like, a $5 fine in case they dump nuclear waste into the fucking Mississippi? Like,
no.
What exactly is the...
He's just giving the principled argument for the existence thereof and the general concept of that level that general level that we are at now should be lower, not non-existent or next to non-existent as you're implying. And
that's it? Like, that's the only regulation?
Yeah,
each according to his ability, to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea.
No, that's what Marx believed.
Strongly disagree. That's Marx's idea. It's immoral and just...
It is immoral.
This guy couldn't explain how it's immoral if I held a gun to his fucking...
I guarantee you he could, and I guarantee you he already has on numerous videos.
head. This guy has no idea.
Practical matter, it never ever works. And actually, at the founding of our own country, after the Pilgrims landed here from the Mayflower, they got out.
Okay, no, the country was founded in 1776. You've made this argument. I think this is probably just a slip up, but wrong.
They tried to practice this idea of
our country wasn't founded when pilgrims left the Mayflower.
Okay, big deal. Moving on.
What?
Okay, he slipped up.
From each according to his ability to each according to his need. And it turned out nobody worked because some other guy would work for him, and then you would get according to your need.
This is actually true. The Pilgrims, when they first got here, the Puritans that came from Lower England and settled in the Massachusetts Bay Colony area, when they initially got here, had a serious problem with that. They wanted to collectivize the means of production. They wanted to collectivize everything. They wanted to live in this basically a hippie society where there's, no property, right? Like everything is just, everybody owns everything and we share with everybody. And it failed miserably. And what naturally came of that after it failed miserably, once people stopped giving a shit, was free markets and capitalism. Some people got wealthier, some, depending on how you want to measure wealth, some people didn't get quite as wealthy, but everyone got better off and they stopped starving.
So
what?
What do you mean?
What the
that
fuck
happened? That really happened.
Oh, is that why Jamestown failed? Because everyone was...
He said the Mayflower. Oh my God. The Puritans that came over here on the Mayflower and settled in the Massachusetts Bay Colony tried this out and it didn't work. No, Jamestown failed for a variety of reasons. But this actually happened in the Boston area.
Lazy? I think he's just completely
he didn't say they were lazy.
The communist... The communist pilgrims of
No, my God, no. What he's implying is that when you tell people there's not going to be any incentive for working harder, you don't work as hard. Or as a rule, there's only going to be one. The Pareto distribution is a real thing. Like 1 or 2 people are going to make all of the food, are going to grow all of the wheat, are going to do all of the work. And as a result, nobody has to work as hard to get at least something out of that transaction if you just collectivize those means of production. But then, of course, what wound up happening was because there was no incentive to do more than the bare minimum, they eked away a living on the bare minimum, and the moment something came along, a hard winter, a hard cold snap, everyone died. Everyone died.
Jamestown. Karl Marx. When he says Karl Marx is an evil ideologue, it's because he hasn't forgiven him.
He was an evil ideologue. Read any of the biographies on Marx. I encourage everyone who's watching this video not only to read his ideas, but to also read biographies on Marx. He was kind of a piece of shit.
He hasn't forgiven him for what happened to Jamestown. This is completely made up. Yeah, no shit, dude. You think that people would travel across the Atlantic Ocean to settle an unfounded, at least unfounded to them, territory and establish a colony with a weak work ethic?
With an intent to establish a communistic society? Yes, they did that. That really happened. And it crushed their work ethic.
They were fucking settlers.
Yes.
These people work their asses off. All right, just...
And never got to reap the rewards of their own labor.
It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. Now, it's a wonderful reflection on our society that we have so many choices in drinking water. So we can either slum it with the tap water or we can go with the fancy Fiji. And we get to choose which one we want. Works for me, man. Strongly disagree. Land shouldn't...
I mean, we could have expected that one, right? Remember when you... was that like...
Vaush doesn't realize that the reason that we're able to get fresh water to places like Puerto Rico, the reason we're able to get potable water to places like Puerto Rico after a hurricane or Houston after a hurricane is because we can bottle water in other places and send it down in bottles.
Fucking... Did he get like a sponsorship for that?
Could be.
I don't care that much about bottled water. I don't fucking know. I think that tap water should be free. When you buy bottled water, you're buying the plastic.
No, I mean, you should never have to pay. You should never have to pay somebody for the fruits of their labor. Right, the people that dig those wells and build the water towers that allow public water supplies to exist. No, don't pay them. No. Never recompense the products of their labor. That's not slavery.
Container, really, which can be convenient. Which is why what we all need to do is we need to buy cool fucking one-time purchases of big jugs. Look, big jug.
Or you buy the bottle and you just reuse the bottle. I guarantee you, I spent less on this. Branded logo, sure, than your expensive ass bottle.
See? Now I don't pay a goddamn dime. Big jug.
Shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Well, what should it be? What's the alternative?
What's the alternative to a commodity? Let me just, what is capitalist realism? Let me think. Is there any state of being for something apart from it being something to be sold and bought? Let me.
Anything for which there is scarcity and demand is going to get commodified. That's just how human beings work. Anything that can possibly be exchanged is going to continue to be exchanged. And there's going to be media for exchange, currency. In some places, land winds up becoming effectively a medium of exchange. That happened in feudal Europe. In the earliest days of the first introductions of voluntary exchange, what we had was the exchange of land. In many cases, dowries were backed by a guarantee of land. It's one of these things where, like, the moment something becomes a commodity, there's no way to not have it be a commodity. Oh, Russia found this out. The Soviet Union actually found this out. That when farmers had their land basically seized by the government, the moment people would turn their backs, that if there was a way to privatize that land, if there was a way to make some sort of exchange based on the title to that land or the privileges associated with those titles, it was done. It was done on the black market in very, very limited supply numbers, but it actually happened. This is the nature of the thing. Once you invent the atomic bomb, you can't uninvent the atomic bomb. Once you invent firearms and guns and ammo, you can't uninvent those things. You can't take something like a firearm and eliminate all firearms the world over, because the human capital that goes into that, once it exists, never ceases to exist. I mean, unless you were to just like nuke the entire planet and vaporize every human being on there, right? At its core, all of these things are a manifestation of human capital. And that human capital, of course, is going to in some way come from the mixing of the soil with your mixing of your blood with the soil, mixing of your labor with the soil that you wind up working. So it's impossible to decommodify it unless you're talking about just government owning all land, which is what the Soviet Union tried. It's just also what Mao tried. It's also what Vietnam tried. It's what Zimbabwe tried. It's what South Africa's trying right now. And it's never worked.
Oh, let me massage my onions over here for a second. Nope, can't think of anything else.
Can you think of the Holodomor?
What the left wants to pretend is the alternative is we're all just living like kumbaya, having a great time. But really...
Or just decommodification, you know.
Land will always be a commodity that is controlled by a person or a group of people. The question is...
That's not what a commodity means.
Do you want it to be controlled by...
What are you talking about? Obviously, when you have something that is a commodity, it has an exchange value. There is something that that's something that people crave, or in the most colloquial of senses, demand of the thing. And that demand isn't just going to disappear. You can't decommodify a good unless, again, you're talking about government controlling the totality of that good, which isn't really decommodifying. It's just putting government in charge of it.
People like you and me, or by the government, for instance. Certainly not the government.
Wait, the government represents the people. If corporations don't represent the people.
What do you think a fucking shareholder is? Who the fuck do you think the board of directors answers to? They don't answer to any people? I own a company. Does my company have an interest? Am I a person within that company that has an interest? Do companies not have interests? Jesus Christ. Yes, I have to serve the interests of my vendors. I have to serve the interests of my vendors. Of my clients, I mean. Like, what the hell, Vaush? Of course there are people that these companies have to serve, or they would cease to exist. Of course they have a vested interest in their own consumer base. It's not like they're going to laser beam them to death. It's not like they're going to make a Death Star so they can blow up a planet and be a man on an island in the Death Star. Jesus Christ.
Wait, what the fuck does that mean? If I would rather it being owned by... I like how he says people like you and me, like he's not like some wealthy plutocrat and the people watching aren't like 16-year-olds in high school.
So I strongly disagree with that. It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to society. Who is that? Who does that refer to? Probably the nincompoop who wrote this question thinks it refers to people on Wall Street, like investors or bankers or something.
This is a loaded
as though they're
question.
just sitting at a desk, like shuffling piles of money around. That's not how the financial services industry works.
You're right. Now it's machines do that instead of the humans, and people just make money off the machines doing that rather than shuffling it themselves. Are you fucking kidding me? I forget the technical term for this, but there's an actual measurement of how much wealth in this country is being made off of real things and how much of it is being generated off
speculation
that exists only in some sort of hypothetical suspended. Oh man, I wish I knew more about the stock market, because there's a
oh my god, because you don't know anything about the stock market. Listen, people who make money off of speculation through the stock market are going to make money off of speculation through some other thing. Commodities exchange, you can speculate on that. You can speculate on monetary exchange. People who buy into crypto and aren't necessarily doing that through the common exchange markets. People who invest in cars. Someone who invests in a DeLorean today, it might be doing that in the as a speculative investment, thinking that by simply buying the car and sitting on it, it will appreciate in value. There are things out there that just simply appreciate in value. And for those of you who are looking to get into commodities exchange, for those of you who are looking to get in the stock market, this is don't do that. Invest your money in mutual funds and, diversify a portfolio, mitigate against risk. You are not an expert investor. Don't own stock.
really, really interesting I've read some really interesting articles, but it was over a year ago. But there are mathematical ways of determining how representative Wall Street investment is in actual existing wealth. And it is provable that Wall Street is full of systems which just procure money or absorb money while doing nothing. That is a thing, but I don't
think he understands what doing nothing means. If I'm the person who's able to buy low, sell high, right? If I'm the guy who's like, you know what? I think that person is going to sell me their company. And I think they're going to sell it to me at a price that's below what they should probably be selling it to me for. If I can buy that house, and I think that person, if I see a lawnmower on Craigslist, and I'm like, you know what? That lawnmower, he's only asking $1,200 for it. I think I could flip it for $1,800. Well, the point of me being able to flip it for $1,800 is I have this human capital, which is knowing that this guy's undervalued the mower. Or it's having the patience to sit on it for a week or two and put together a real post. This is what I'm adding to the actual transaction. I'm not adding to the mower, but I'm the guy who says, I think I can sell that for more than what he's asking for. And in the end, the guy who sells it for $1,200 to me gets his $1,200. And in the end, the guy who winds up buying the mower for me for $1,800 gets the mower. And if he's not the one that's buying it for $1,200, he never would have bought it for $1,200. If I'm the one buying it for $1,200, he wants the mower. But something needs to connect him to the mower. In this case, something needs to connect the future buyers of the shares of this stock to the current buyers of the current sellers of the shares of this stock. In this case, yes, I'm just a middleman, but I'm the one who's able to make those connections. That's what we're talking about here. And this is, of course, obviously useful because the people in the future that own that stock would rather have the stock than the money that they're exchanging for that stock. That's self-evidently true. And the people that have the stock now would rather have the money that I'm giving them than sit on it and wait for that money in the future. It's basically just like working out interest. Like any investment works with.
Need to look more into it to be able to specifically rebut the claim.
Financial services adds liquidity to markets. Investors invest money in companies that create jobs, that create products. It's so dumb. So I reject the premise of the question.
That's not what they were talking. Okay.
Question, but even getting at what they try to say strongly.
This guy is so fucking dumb. If you disagree, then you are rejecting the question. The point, this is a statement you're meant to agree.
It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Michael Knowles is saying it is not regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society.
Or disagree with. If you disagree, you are inherently rejecting the question. You don't say, I reject the premise of this question, and also I disagree with the premise of this question.
Because there's no radio button for disagree with the premises, Vaush. This is what we mean by the questions are loaded. Thank you for explaining to the world why these questions are loaded.
What, like, he thinks that he's, like, repudiating the quiz. His disagreement is a component of the allowed range of thought in response to this question.
Right, and the allowed range of thought in response to this question is not wide enough given the nature of the question. That we need another response here. We need another option to respond to this question. And it's not there. Hence, loaded question.
Disagree. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Strongly agree.
Don't doubt it.
So protectionism is necessary in trade. So if we're here to protect an interest in international trade, let's say, because internal trade should never have any form of protectionism garnered from the state. If you're protecting your own interests, let's say I have an invention, and I'm not going to get into intellectual property, but let's say I have this invention, and it's a big secret as to how I came up with this invention. Of course, I'm going to try to protect that secret with whatever means I have available to me. Now, you could say that the government shouldn't be involved in that protection. Fine. But I'm going to do my best to keep the secret of how Telstar is made, to keep the secret of how Merit is made. I'm going to hold the secrets of how glyphosate is made. Yeah. So in that sense, yeah, okay, I guess there is some sort of protectionism, but I'm sure what they're talking about is protectionism in trade in the sense of we don't want our jobs going to China because we want our jobs to stay here in the United States. I guess if there was something happening with the jobs in China that we as a country objected to, not just that those jobs are being offshored, but that they're being offshored in a country that we have some other moral apprehensions against, then we would say, all right, we're not going to continue to conduct trade until you get these policies changed. So this is a matter of leverage that we wind up eating. So I suppose that could be useful, but it's not like you send us more goods than we send you in terms of the value of those goods. So we need to, balance a trade deficit or something. That's ridiculous. That's just stupid. I don't care about any of that. And that's probably what this question is going for. But since people don't understand commodities and exchange, international trade, etc., it's, what they think is common parlance is something that we might disagree on.
The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. I disagree with that. It's hard. I'm right in the center.
It's also serving God and your race and your country, of course.
Of course, because he's going to impugn Michael Knowles with racism, even though none of that has revealed itself, ever.
And that is the primary objective of a company, is to deliver a profit to its shareholders. But a company does have other roles in society. And actually, the reason it's complicated is because the neglect of those roles in society can generate a lot of bad PR and ultimately stop the shareholders from getting their profits.
Okay, so you don't actually care about these other things. You only care about them because they're a component of shareholder profits.
So it's Vaush, all he's intimating is a utilitarian perspective on the role of corporations and their duties and responsibilities to the shareholders. It's just utilitarianism. That's it.
So, dumb question. Really, I would throw the whole thing out. But if I have...
Now, I would say that there are plenty of companies out there that see beyond the role of being fiduciaries to their shareholders, which they obviously, under law at least, are. For example, there may be an altruistic motivation to conduct business in a certain manner. So, okay, perhaps altruism is one reason is one thing which CEOs and boards of directors might seek to might seek out as a motivation for how they conduct business, and it might be truly altruistic, as in like, we're donating to this charity and we're not even going to make a PR stink of it. We're just donating to charity and not entirely anonymously because we like this charity.
Have to try to get at the heart of what it's saying. I guess I would slightly disagree. The rich...
It's not a dumb question at all. He keeps thinking he's smarter than the test, and then he answers in ways that are completely accounted for by the test. This guy doesn't realize he's not smarter than this test. I've gone over this test. I think there are legitimate problems with how it functions, with how the test is phrased and what have you.
And then instead of actually delivering on the goods and telling us what those complaints are, you're just going to say, yeah, well, I have these problems, but this guy's wrong.
I think that's a real thing, okay? But this guy's like attempts to outsmart it, or just him being like,
It's not outsmarting. It's just overthinking. There's a difference between the two, Vaush. And I know why you're saying it's outsmarting. Because if it was somebody else that you agree with politically, if it was Bernie Sanders taking this test, making these complaints about how these questions are loaded and in some ways ambiguous, you would say, oh, he's overthinking.
I disagree with this question. And then he clicks disagree. And he thinks that's like refuting the premise.
Or two.
No, his response in the video is refuting the premise. There are only 4 options to choose from in answering the question, Vaush. Jesus Christ.
Highly taxed. Strongly agree. The rich pay all the taxes in this country. And so...
Wait, I'm sorry, what was that?
Too highly taxed. Strongly agree. The rich pay all the taxes in this country.
That is objectively not the case.
That is objectively the case. If you look at the actual dollar amount of taxes paid, it's something like the top 10% of all income earners pay something like 75% of all taxes. And then if you go to the corporate world, if you associate those 10% of people with their corporations or with the businesses that they work with, yeah, I mean, it's virtually all of the income taxes in this country are paid for by a tiny, tiny minority who are all the wealthiest people in this country.
Here, we can hold on. What percent of taxes are paid by wealthy? The top 1% in this country pays about a third of a third of the total taxes.
How is that helping your case? Expand that out to like 10%. Expand that out to 10%. We measure things in this country by quintiles. So extend that out to the quintile, the 20%. What do the top 20% make? What do the top 20% account for in contributions to income tax in this country?
How much wealth does the 1% control? How much wealth?
So what? Irrelevant.
The 1%
isn't helping your case.
And the 1% owns slightly more than a third of the country's wealth in 2016, at least, which means that the wealthy are paying an amount exactly proportional to their...
You are talking about the difference between the capital that they have amassed over the years and the income that they are earning from year to year. This is smoke and mirrors, folks. This is like one thing is not the same as the other, and he's treating them as the same as the other.
To the total amount of wealth they control in this country.
And it's a complete pivot. Look, the question was, what percent of the income taxes paid per annum are paid by the wealthiest people in the country? And the answer is let's say 10% pay for a wildly disproportionate percentage of taxes relative to the percentage of people that they account for. This is the question. You're obfuscating the actual question by answering an entirely different question. I don't know who's making the argument that you're trying to debunk here with this data point, but perhaps that person you're trying to debunk here is a straw man.
Which is not nearly enough.
It never is. You guys have no limiting principle. So here's my proposal to you, Vaush. I don't know if you're ever going to see this, but I suggest that you pick a percentage, and that percentage of people who earn a certain dollar amount, you pick a dollar amount or a percentage of income earners in this country. I'm going to set a tax rate on their income tax of 100 trillion %. Tell me why that's stupid. And don't just say, oh, that's just dumb, because that's ridiculous. We can't set that. Okay, why can't we? And stop engaging in circular logic. Give me the answer. Why is it not okay to just steal everything everyone has ever made because they're rich?
And so, sure, the vast majority of taxes in this country. And so, yeah, I think they are probably too highly taxed. I can't wait to become one of
objectively do not.
Those rich who is too highly taxed.
They do.
And then maybe we'll lower them. Those with the ability to pay should
Very nice. Glad that he's literally just admitting his only interest here is because one day he can be the millionaire. Wait, hold on. How rich is this guy? Michael Knowles net worth. Is he wealthy enough to even have like a net worth? The estimated net worth of Michael Knowles is at least $1.5 million. My dude. Dude. Yeah, it's true. You can't trust those sites. One of those sites put me at being a millionaire too. So I don't fucking know. That's above average, but not insane or anything. Yeah, but he's like, people like you and me, you know, maybe one day I'll be wealthy and then I'll complain about the tax rate or something like that. Oh
my God, Vaush. It's because you are so financially and economically illiterate. You don't know what defines actual wealth and how wealth is actually measured. You have no idea how little it takes to be qualified as a millionaire in terms of measurements of wealth. Most people who own a home are close to fucking millionaires anyways. Most people who have paid off a mortgage, which is a lot of people over the age of 50. Once you get to a certain age bracket, it becomes basically the majority of people are homeowners. And once you get above a certain age, anyone who owns an actual physical piece of property, who owns land, who owns the home that they live in, most of those people are, if not millionaires, they're on their way to it. They're really not that far away from it. And the reason that this doesn't make up a majority of people is because the majority of people aren't over 50, right? There are still a ton of people between the ages of 0 and 30. And most of these people don't have they haven't had time in the workforce to build up wealth. And they haven't had time to build up the human capital that would allow them to be paid on a per annum basis more than they would be if they don't have that accumulation of human capital.
And he's doing fine.
Have access to higher standards of medical care. That's not even a normative question, like should or should not. It is simply a descriptive matter that it has always been and will always be the case. I'm going to kill myself. That people with more money have access to more stuff. Any reason?
No, that is not true. There are countries on Earth right now where the amount of wealth you have does not determine the medical care that you get.
If Jeff Bezos never visits a doctor, if Jeff Bezos is one of these people that just refuses to seek medical care, he's the wealthiest person on Earth. What is medical care going to look like? It's going to be shit, isn't it? Isn't it? Because he's chosen not to do that. However, if we're talking about Guatemala, the wealthiest people in Guatemala, who, by the way, are all in government at this point, the wealthiest people in Guatemala, except for maybe like one or two oil barons in Guatemala that are I'm absolutely certain, causally linked their wealth is causally linked to some sort of symbiotic relationship with the Guatemalan government, right? If you talk about Guatemala, then the people that have a ton of money in Guatemala are, as a rule, going to be able to exchange that medium of exchange for more goods and services than those who don't have a lot of mediums of exchange to exchange for those goods and services. If their currency is seashells, and then the person who has a ton of seashells and a ton of land and a ton of buildings and a ton of things is going to be able to exchange that ton of things for a ton of things. This is like self-evidently true, Vaush.
A reasonable person would have to strongly agree with that, not as a matter of should or should not, but it's just the way the world always works. It's like
prescriptive
the sun should
question.
Shine. Strongly disagree. Well, okay, man. Good luck with that one. Governments.
It's asking you a prescriptive question, and he's like, "Oh, well, this is descriptive." If a question said, there should be no rape in the world, agree or disagree, and then this guy would go, "Oh, well, just descriptively, there is rape in the world." So
it's possible for there to not be rape in the world. It's not going to ever happen. But it's possible. It's obviously going to be true that if there are people that have more of a thing than other people, then they will be able to exchange the more of the thing for more things than the people with less of the things can exchange for those things. Like, this is not the same thing at all. This is a terrible analogy.
So I'm going to have to disagree because descriptively there is rape in the world. He's so fucking stupid.
He's so fucking stupid, and he doesn't understand that what you're talking about is the existence of a thing which could technically not exist. It could technically not exist, right? It's not ever going to not exist, but it could technically not exist. The nature of human beings, the nature of any sort of exchange is that if I have 2 envelopes and someone has 1 envelope, the person with the 2 envelopes is going to be able to exchange more for those 2 envelopes than the person with 1 envelope. That's the nature of how we count things. If I have 1 apple and another person has 3 apples, then obviously the person with the 3 apples can get more oranges for his 3 apples than the person with the 1 apple, so long as the apples are identical in terms of quality. This is an axiomatic truth.
Should penalize businesses that mislead the public. What do you mean mislead the public? If we're talking about how markets do need
okay, he's about to overthink this question again. Yep.
Structures around them and guardrails, then sure, I guess I slightly agree. But again, very dumb question. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Predator multinationals? So I think this is where you actually need to look into the question, because in this case, a genuinely free market, when you have predator multinationals, that reads like collusive anti-competitive behavior, and that's not an element of a free market. So in order to restore a mutual consent to that market, then you have to have a government step in and restore mutual consent to that market, because if everyone is colluding in a manner that prevents competition to enter into the market, nobody is ever going to be able to consent to that, and nobody's ever going to be able to do anything consensually to avoid being involved in that transaction. So that's and a collusive anti-competitive behavior is not an element of a free market, so it needs to be restored to the free market. The only way to do that is with government.
Adam Smith believed that.
Free markets need to protect against certain monopolies, sure. The freer the market,
certain
the freer
monopolies.
the people. Yeah, generally that's true. Not always, though. You know, especially when you look at the international sphere, if you have no barriers to trade, for instance, and you're outsourcing all of your jobs to another country, and some other country is not playing fairly, and they have a ton of barriers to trade, and they're illegally subsidizing their aluminum industry, and I'm actually just talking...
Wait, what do you mean illegally subsidizing their aluminum industry?
Okay, he's using a colloquial term to talk about subsidizing an aluminum industry that in a manner that would be illegal in any free market society.
How can it be illegal if they're subsidizing it? Do you mean illegal by international law, the thing you think doesn't exist?
He's using a colloquialism here, Vaush, and it's painfully obvious.
Did he say aluminum?
He's about to explain this.
About China here, then certainly it is not the case that the freer the market, the freer the people. So I guess I kind of...
Well, okay, so one is necessarily dependent upon the other. So in order to have a free market, you have to have free people. In order to have free people, you have to have a free market. So the two kind of go hand in hand. So he may be reading too much into this question. I would say that it is in order to have one, yes, you have to have the other, and that goes both directions.
I agree, but come on, right back.
Wait, by what standard? If they impose subsidies or tariffs, that's the right of their country. You're the one who just said that countries should engage in protectionism.
Under certain circumstances. He said agree, not strongly agree. He said sometimes it can be useful.
He has so many competing ideas here.
No.
So it's okay for a country to be protectionist, but you should...
Sometimes. Remember, he said sometimes.
...be able to have corporate controls and government regulation, but not too much. But then it's illegal to do other countries for them to do
their... the reason you're stumbling with this, Vaush, is because it's a straw man argument. It has nothing to do with anything Vaush that he's actually saying. It's really difficult to conceive of these ideas when you're making them up on the fly.
Thing, but international law doesn't exist. Yeah, this guy might actually end up being a centrist for how many fucking conflicting positions he has. I guarantee you this guy's given absolutely no thought to any of them.
Better questions, guys. Abortion.
Principle of charity, guys, here. That's what we're engaging with here. Good faith.
When the woman's life is not threatened should always be illegal. Strongly agree. Yep. All authority should be questioned. It's very difficult to make that statement because...
You already said that you don't believe your country can do wrong, motherfucker, okay?
That's one source of authority, you piece of shit. That's one. That's one. Are we about to gaslight Michael Knowles' position here?
Okay. You've already said your country can do no wrong, okay? Your answer...
No, he said he would always support it. He didn't say it could do no wrong.
...here is strongly disagree. It doesn't matter what you answer here. Your answer is strongly disagree.
Because any rational discourse has to begin with certain premises. A equals A. A plus B equals B plus A.
Questioning authority doesn't mean questioning epistemic values. When they say, you should question authority, they don't mean you should become a fucking hyper-skeptic.
Oh my God. So should a religious person question the authority that is his God? Because these are epistemic questions. These are a prioristic axiomatic positions that are extolled by, for example, the Bible and the Christian faith. So should they not question? Should they not question the deity that is providing these axiomatic a prioristic positions? Should they not question the positions themselves?
I can't prove those things, but that's where I begin from my assertion. I would have to assume, if I'm having a rational discourse, that truth exists. So you have to assume certain things. Chesterton put it well. He said, there is a thought that stops thought, and that is the only thought that ought to be stopped. So I have to very slightly disagree.
Okay, that was an incredibly circuitous way to get to the answer that he was going for. But nothing that he said was really all that wrong.
And
again, the authority they're talking about is not mathematical truisms. I have no fucking idea. Again, he's trying to outsmart the quiz again. He's like,
no, he's just overthinking
you question all authority? Well, what about the authority of the great mathematician Pythagoras when he determined that if you square the lengths of two sides of a triangle, that you arrive at the square root of the length?
But so if the proof of that isn't the actual mathematical proof, but is, hey, he said so, therefore it's true. My teacher said so, therefore it's true. Anthony Fauci said so, therefore it's true. Should we question it or should we not question it?
The third end. Is that the authority you want to question? Whatever. I think I stammered on a couple of words there. Whatever.
For an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That's a description of justice, but then forgive your enemies and pray for your persecutors is a description of mercy. So I guess as a description of justice, I agree with that. But what is it describing? Taxpayer.
But what is it describing? Hold on. What is it describing, Vaush? He doesn't answer the question. He probably should answer his own question. But what is it describing?
Dude, these questions are prescriptive. If they were descriptive...
Oh my God. So is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth a floor or a ceiling, Vaush? When somebody takes your eye, should you always take at least their eye? Or is that a way of saying when somebody takes your eye, you can take no more than an eye?
They would be asking you math questions. They're prescriptive. They're asking you for your opinion.
Right, and you don't understand that the framework of the question is obviously from the Judeo-Christian, it's obviously biblical. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Yes, Gandhi once said, will leave us both blind. But if you interpret it the way that I know Michael Knowles interprets it, which is as a ceiling and not a floor, and the way you're interpreting it is as a floor and not a ceiling, do you see how we're going to have a conflict of interest when it comes to how we answer these questions, which is why these questions are loaded?
What do you think?
I'm going to move me to the front here real quick. Excuse me, folks. Yeah, I'm going to move me to the front. There we go.
Justice should be. This guy keeps answering in authoritarian ways, but then he's like, well, I have to do this because if you misinterpret the question in a very specific way, then this is the descriptive answer you must arrive at. I'm going to kill myself.
Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. I disagree with that. Schools should not make...
Why aren't you pausing here? Because this is actually contradictory to his because you're not willing to engage in this with good faith. Because I actually know Knowles' positions, and Knowles has said in the past that he actually disagrees with this position and has elicited positions that are contradictory to this position. I wonder if he pauses to talk about this.
Classroom...
Wait! You think taxpayers should be subsidizing art that can't survive What positions do you hold? I swear to God, this dude's going...
This is the only internal contradiction he has. It is an internal contradiction, but it's the only one, Vaush.
Soft Nazi in us. There's a reason why he didn't mention Hitler as an example of auth-right. Everything that he's talking about, from protectionism to...
He's a Nazi. Here we go. Here's the reductio ad Hitlerium. He owned a dog, therefore he's a Nazi because he doesn't perfectly align with Leninist Marxism.
Minimal, from protectionism to he couldn't even answer strongly disagree on the racial superiority thing, to not questioning authority, to believing in subsidized...
Why, though? Did he give a rationale for that? Are you covering up the rationale here? Are we not going to talk about the rationale? Are we not going to provide context? Are we going to deliberately strip his responses of context? Is that good faith?
Art. I feel like he's just circling the wagon around Nazism right here.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Wait, shouldn't we prop up all art? If you believe we should, if you're a highly ethnocentric nationalist who believes we should prop up art, but then rely on the free market.
He's not an ethnocentric nationalist the way you're describing it.
And other elements, you're probably talking about propping up nationalistic or ethnocentric art. Very rarely do authoritarian governments prop up just any old fucking artist who wants to get a grant. They usually prop up artists who align with the national interest.
Attendance compulsory.
And that's true of all the communist countries too.
Strongly disagree with that. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind.
Okay, so own kind is a deliberately ambiguous phrase. This is a question Ben Shapiro took serious issue with. Now, when Ben Shapiro did this, there was not a whole lot of pausing. It was just ram through most of these questions. But this is one of the questions that he actually took the time to answer. And I've included a clip of that in a number of my videos. Check it out. It's a loaded question because what does their own kind mean? Vaush interprets it to mean people of their own race should, stick to their own race, right? The blacks should be with the blacks and the whites should be with the whites or something along those lines, right? The green should be with the greens and the red should be with the reds. So I know that's how you're going to interpret that, but the phrase their own kind is genuinely ambiguous. And that's why this is going to be a tough question to answer, unless you're going to read into it your interpretation of the thing. Now, most people are going to read into it your interpretation of the thing, Vaush. And I'm ascribing his interpretation of the thing to this, folks, because I've seen him answer this question 3 times now. When he did it, when Ben Shapiro did it, and I think then when Shu did it too.
So what the hell does that mean?
You know what it means, you fucking dipshit.
No, it's a loaded question, and it is reasonable and rational to interpret it multitude of different ways. What does society mean, Vaush? What does the people mean, Vaush? These are deliberately ambiguous terms. They could have said race. They didn't.
Just answer the question.
Well, the more serious question here, Vaush, is why didn't they just say race?
I actually feel like I'm watching an alt-writer here. He's like, did you guys ever...
Oh, you mean like Kamala Harris?
Ever see Nick Fuentes take his fucking quiz? He does the same thing. It's like, when he gets...
Everybody should be doing the same thing because they don't say race. They say their own kind.
The question about racial differences, he's like, I don't know what you mean by...
Because the only parametric to ascribe to a kind is race. The only way to do that is race. The only reasonable way to describe people on group characteristic is by the dimension of race. Is that right? Is that right, Vaush? Because that's what a reasonable interpretation of what you're suggesting here is. In fact, let me walk that back. Maybe it's not a reasonable interpretation, but it's not. Maybe it's not the reasonable interpretation, but it's a very valid and reasonable interpretation that of what you've just said and what you've just intimated. So where does this sit, Vaush?
By that, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at it. It's very weird. I don't know. I guess I might have to click this answer that says I agree with it, but I don't know. I mean,
this is
God, what
bad faith. God damn it.
Brainlet, dude.
Speaking of brainlet.
Okay, somebody told me to take a look at his Twitter because recently he tweeted something very dumb that belied an unfamiliarity with the English language. And...
probably typo.
It's true. Michael Knowles, in response to a Facebook post from Barack Obama, says, "What a ridiculous word," while highlighting impactful. How precisely can something be full of impact
I wonder if Vaush has followed Vaush Knowles' Twitter account, because Knowles' Twitter account, like Matt Walsh, is like one of the most trolly Twitter accounts there is. Okay.
Yeah, this is the pinnacle of the intellectual dark web. I actually can't believe this isn't satire.
It probably is.
This is actually extraordinary to me. Well, dictionaries and the English language BTFO'd, I guess.
I guess I'm going to disagree with that.
Wait.
What the hell does that mean? I guess I'm going to disagree with that.
He can't strongly disagree with it.
Because their own kind isn't the phrase their own race. If it just said, but it's better for all of us that different races should keep to their own race, then he would probably say strongly disagree. But it doesn't say that, does it, Vaush? What does it say instead? It says different sorts of people. Sorts of people could mean a lot of different things, because there are a lot of dimensions by which you could sort people. Should keep to their own kind. What does kind mean? Again, there are a lot of dimensions by which you could divide people into kinds.
It's better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind, and he can't strongly disagree with it. Dude knows exactly what the fuck he's doing. If this guy ends up going...
Right, he's overthinking these questions in some cases, and in this case, this question is, if you read it in a literal sense, ambiguously worded. It doesn't say race. You mentioned on your Ben Shapiro video, when you responded to Ben Shapiro answering this, it means race. So why doesn't it say race? Race is a 4-letter word. Race is a ridiculously easy word to understand, right? In terms of just common parlance, understanding of the colloquial version of these words. Well, what does their own kind mean? What does sorts of people mean? Race is fairly unambiguous. If you were to replace, it would be a much less ambiguous question if it said, but it is better for all of us that different races should keep to their own race. Then it's just unambiguously racist. This is at best ambiguously racist.
Going full fucking white nationalist sometime in the next 4 years, I would...
Oh my God, you have to read white nationalism into this.
Not be even remotely surprised. This guy's way more open with it than Ben Shapiro is. And he's so much stupider than Shapiro, too. Shapiro didn't try this hard to outsmart the test in ways that signified how...
True. Ben Shapiro did not overthink this test as much as Michael Knowles did. Do you see how all I have to do is say he's not overthinking it? And it's a totally different way of describing a thing. Like, in your mind, what do you think of when somebody is trying to outsmart a test versus somebody who's overthinking a test? Right? Like, there's a way to describe things that isn't always the exact opposite of the principle of charity.
Unintelligent he is.
Speaking of unintelligent.
I don't even know where that's going.
Yes, you do! The fact that you're laughing means you know what it is. You know! And you still didn't put strongly disagree.
Oh my God. Because there's only one way to answer this test. If you don't fill out the, according to Vaush, since he's allowed to strawman, I'll strawman him. According to Vaush, if you don't answer the questions in exactly the way that he filled them out, if you don't fill in the bubbles the exact way Vaush filled them out, you're a racist, bigot, homophobe, white nationalist, white supremacist, evil MFer who should have their family Cheshire-homed invasion and then should be flayed in public by their testicles.
Sometimes have to...
Vaush, disagree with me there. I hope you get to see this video and then you get to this point. Tell me if you disagree with that position.
Spank their
and
children.
Why?
Yeah, I guess so. Not a huge fan of corporal punishment, but sometimes you got to do it, I guess.
Except you said yes to an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So there's an...
Again, he is almost certainly using the Christian interpretation of this because he's a hyper Christian. He's the Catholic that takes Catholicism to the cartoon extreme. He is the caricature in this respect, and he often does this on his shows in a trolling manner. He takes it to a deliberately hyperbolic extent that even he doesn't believe in, right? Because it's a trolly thing to do. An eye for an eye could be seen as a ceiling or as a floor. In the Bible, it's seen as a ceiling. You see it as a floor.
It's another enlightened, centrist, incompatible position.
It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents.
Yes,
That's natural. Probably shouldn't encourage it if you're a parent.
True.
But that is natural. Strongly agree. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense.
Again, he doesn't realize that's a prescriptive question, not a descriptive question. So he's answering strongly agree because he thinks he's...
No, it's not. It says it's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Where is the prescriptive element of that? Where's the ought? Where's the should in all of this? Well, just because something is natural doesn't mean it's necessarily something you would agree or disagree with. And he explained that in answering the question. Jesus Christ. But it is natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Agree. Is it natural for males of the human species to be taller than females of the human species? Agree. Strongly agree. Is that saying that it's good for males to be strong? No. No, Vaush. This is just a description of reality. There's no, in the previous question, correct, you're right. He was overreading it, and yes, there was probably an ought built into that question, but there is no ought built into this question. Is it natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents? Of course it's natural.
Supposed to identify how accurate the statement is.
Oh,
he
my
knows
God.
He's taking a political compass test, right? Like, this is meant to...
So then why is the political compass test putting in questions that don't have an ought in them?
Determine your perspectives on life, you're not...
This is why these are bad questions.
There isn't like a right or a wrong answer.
Vaush, show me where it says ought. Show me where it says should. Show me where it says any word that we would associate with a normative claim. Show me any of those words.
Where you fail if you put disagree, and then the test says, actually, it is natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents.
And yet you are the one that was describing earlier in this video that there are questions that you could answer incorrectly. That there are questions that you can just get wrong and that you could fail at this test.
Disagree. I don't really care. I just hate that potheads try to make marijuana.
Okay. I don't really care. I just hate that potheads want to try to make marijuana illegal. I don't really care. I don't really care. I don't really care. I don't really care.
Legalization, like the civil rights struggle of our times. Give me a break, guys. Good grief. It's also...
I do not want to hear about fucking tilting at windmills from a fucking conservative thought leader, okay?
Okay, tilting at windmills. I don't want to hear about tilting at windmills because you're a Republican, because you're a conservative, right? This is just an ad hominem.
You motherfuckers talk about the war on Christmas like it was fucking Normandy, okay? Shut the fuck up.
So different than...
Because you guys created the euphemism of war. Sucks when the shoe doesn't fit so well and it's on the other foot, does it, Vaush?
Booze, in that booze has always been in our civilization, going back to the ancient old-timey days. Christ's first miracle is turning water into wine for drunk people. So it's been around a long time.
Did you see how he's like holding back laughter? Yeah, he's making a joke, and he's taking this entire test as a joke. He's not answering any of these questions seriously. This is a giant troll. Thank you for falling for his troll, Vaush.
You know, that's why prohibition didn't work. But marijuana is just some new foreign lib thing, so...
Weed has been around for fucking ages. Like,
True.
Weed has been around forever. Weed has been around for far longer than the United States of America has been around. Foreign lib thing? Is that a dog whistle?
Oh my God, everything's a dog whistle, isn't it? Everything's a... You realize that white nationalist has become a dog whistle, Vaush. Yeah, you call somebody a white nationalist, that's the cue for the radicals within in the leftist ranks to destroy somebody's life and their livelihood.
It seems to me better not to introduce that into our culture. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Strongly disagree with that.
Whoa. I think I'm actually going to wildly disagree with Michael Knowles on this one, but probably not for the reasons that Vaush is going to elicit. I think I would say I agree. The prime function of schools should be to equip future generations to find jobs. Okay, I'm going to strongly agree. Why not? Because the only thing you should be learning is stuff that is useful. And the only thing you should be learning is stuff that is useful because it is useful by any sort of measurable metric. And that metric, of course, is going to have some value to it. And that value is something that always can be exchanged in some way. In some way, the primary function, it says the primary function of schooling should be, yes, to Do the education side of things that allow people to be valuable members of our society. And that value is their human capital, which they can always exchange because we live in a free market. And we live in a market where individuals own their own human capital, which is capitalism. If you don't get to own your own human capital, who owns your human capital? Who owns your labor and your skills? Might be the maestros, the masters.
People with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. Strongly disagree with that.
Okay.
The left, I think, strongly agrees with that. You know, in Iceland last year, there was a headline. They said, Iceland has eradicated Down syndrome. Said, you eradicated it what? Like you came up with a cure for it? And it turned out, no, they just kill all the people who have Down syndrome in the womb. So,
you mean the parents consent to abort those children?
Oh my God, here comes the gaslight. So I'm not going to take a position on abortion, but there are two sides of the aisle. One, the thing in the womb is a baby. Two, the thing in the womb is not a baby. That's all there is. One side is consistent and at least addressing the fact that this is the point of contention in this debate. The other side refuses to even address that fact. Either what's in the womb is a baby or it's not. One side of the aisle says what's in the womb is a baby. The other side of the aisle says you're evil. And that's how it gets reduced to it. Watch this. Guarantee that's what Vaush goes with.
So, oh God, first of all, he thinks he's being smart again. Okay, first of all, people with serious inheritable disabilities should not be allowed to reproduce. This is a question about whether or not the state should disallow people with inheritable disabilities from reproducing, okay?
True. So we're reading into the question here, Vaush. We have to look to its actual intentions here, Vaush. We have to read into the question, Vaush.
Okay. This has nothing to do with the right to abortion if you know your child is going to have Down syndrome.
It's ancillarily related to it in the way that Michael Knowles explained. That if the government says that you have to abort your kids because they have Down syndrome, then that's what we're talking about here. So he's giving you an example of this happening in let's say consensual terms, right? Where it's not the government coming down and forcing that on people. He made that point clear when he first brought this up. So the next step from that, the next step down that pathway, if we're going to go one step further, and it's possible to not go one step further, but if we go one step further down that pathway, we are leading to government saying, no, you are forced to abort your kids. I wonder because Mao did this. Mao did this in China in the 1950s. So I wonder if he brings that up.
It's not the same thing.
So that's not good. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Dumb question, but I guess I'll agree. There are no...
How is it...
It is a dumb question. Like, what is the most important thing for children to learn? It's a ridiculously difficult question to answer. And to reduce it to just accept discipline, I don't know. Discipline is a virtue. Like to have your own ability to discipline, to commit to something in a disciplined manner. I mean, that is a virtuous thing. So it's a good thing to learn. It's a very good thing to learn. But I mean, let's see this question again. People with the most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. I don't know. I mean, I guess I would say disagree because I can think of other things that children can learn. And what is the most important thing for children to learn? I don't honestly know. If we're going to reduce it to a single dimension, to a single thing, to a univariate analysis, I don't know what the answer to that question is. And there's no I don't know answer. So I guess I would go with disagree. And if we roll back the tape, let's see what Michael Knowles' actual answer was.
Should disallow people with inheritable disabilities from reproducing, okay? This has nothing to do with the right to abortion if you know your child is going to have Down syndrome. It's not the same thing.
So that's not good. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Dumb question, but I guess I'll agree. There are no...
Again, he says dumb question and then doesn't really think about it and is just barfing out an answer. So he probably doesn't... He's probably a fence sitter on that question too.
Was it you notice how this guy agrees with every question he thinks is dumb? You notice that pattern.
Right. You notice how he's not really taking this thing seriously, Vaush?
Right? Like every time he says a question is dumb, he ends up agreeing with it. Isn't that like eugenics? Yeah, it's a kind of soft eugenics. I think that people have a right to have an abortion, and if they don't want to go through the stresses of having a child with Down syndrome, I think they have a right to have that abortion. But I think that's a very personal decision that they have to make with the consultation of their doctors and the people around them. I don't think it's easy for us to talk about that, and frankly, I don't think it's very easy for us to make fair and reasonable judgments about other people's life decisions with regards to that sort of thing.
So what would you think? What's your honest thoughts on this, Vaush? Love to hear them.
Savage and civilized peoples. There are only different cultures. Strongly disagree.
We know.
Because I have eyes. So, you look around. I mean, gosh, look at so many modern cultures are more savage than tribal cultures. Those who are able to...
I don't even know. Is he saying we're less civilized than the Native American? I don't.
It's a joke, Vaush. Jesus Christ. Hence the chuckle at the end. Jesus Christ. God, he's so fucking obtuse. Look, Vaush, like, he brings up a good point. There is such a thing as just savage people, and there is such a thing as a crap culture, right? There isn't just different cultures. There are shit cultures. And even you have to agree with that. There are groups of peoples who have beliefs and ideals and morals that are garbage. You would call them Republicans because that's how you think of Republicans, as just evil neo-Nazi, white nationalist, white supremacist, garbage human beings who are purely genocidal and just want, and the appropriate response because of how extremely evil these people are is to take 49% of the population or 50% of the population or whatever it works out to for those people who align with conservative views and just Cheshire home invasion their families. And then the remainders we bring out to some very public square and flay them starting with the testicles.
I don't even know. Okay.
Work and refuse the opportunity should not expect society's support.
Strongly agree, of course.
Yes.
When you are troubled, it's better not
because
to think
because that's a reasonable take.
About it, but to keep busy with...
I think he's going to agree with this one. I could be wrong. I haven't seen this video before, but I find that authoritarian-minded people tend to agree with this one because they don't like introspection. Introspection is the enemy of the authoritarian mindset.
So said Marx. So said Lenin. So said Stalin.
You want to stay quiet, keep your nose to the ground, and look up only when it's to lick the boots of the person above you.
So said Mao. So said Idi Amin. So said Pol Pot. So said every dictator who agreed with the collectivization of the means of production.
You don't want to think. So that's my guess.
More cheerful things. I guess I do agree with that. First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated.
Again, he's not putting any thought into that, but so he's not answering it the way that you're answering it. He's not thinking about it the way you're thinking about it, which means that this test, that these questions can be seen through a very different lens, and how you answer those questions could be seen through a lens that isn't just pure evil. It isn't a matter of this question, the way you answer it, whichever radio button you fill in determines if you're evil, right? It's how do you view the thing? And there are multiple ways to view a thing which are perfectly innocuous. But that's not how Vaush views the world.
Within their new country. I disagree
Orange
with
man
that. What's
bad.
good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good.
First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. That's true.
Good for all of us. Strongly disagree with that.
No, I mean, like, it's true that they can be fully integrated into their new country. That's an easy one.
Corporations and corporate America is probably the leading leftist institution in the country.
I don't know if I agree with that, Michael.
How do you arrive at the correct conclusion for the most incorrect reasons? Ah, yes, dude. The abolition of capital truly being led to the forefront by fucking Sears.
Yeah, I probably talked over this. So let me roll it back just a little bit.
Corporations and corporate America is probably the first-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. I disagree with that. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Strongly disagree with that. Corporations and corporate America is probably the leading leftist institution in the country.
So I think I actually agree with this answer.
Corporations and corporate America is...
Let's go back. Sorry about this rewinding here. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. I mean, if the things that allow those good corporations to be, the things that allow the most successful corporations to be the most successful corporations are ultimately, for the most part, actually good for us. So if you want to read into this question, things like free markets, things like the existence of a government in a very libertarian sense, things like there being the pre-existing human capital that allows them to build wealth and to allows them to take advantage of the pre-existing human capital in a way that makes them successful. A meritocratic society, the notion that people who work really hard get to reap the benefit of their own labor, the notion that individuals own their own human capital and have sole autonomy towards that, and are absolutely sovereign to their own human capital. Yeah, I mean, those are the things that allow those corporations to become successful in a free market society. Now, I suppose that government-backed nepotism. Nepotism. I suppose that, the things that aren't representative of a free market, like government handouts and kickbacks and such. Yeah, if that's how you got rich, then that's not good. So I guess, I would have to disagree with this.
Country. I disagree with that. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Strongly disagree with that. Corporations in corporate America is probably the leading leftist institution in the country.
He's not finishing with his answer. So
how do you...
Hold on. Vaush, he hasn't arrived at a conclusion. He's not presented an argument yet. He's provided a premise, and then he's going to present the argument.
Arrive at the correct conclusion for the most incorrect reasons.
The reason would be your argument. He hasn't presented the argument yet. He's only presented the premises.
Ah, yes, dude. The abolition of capital truly being led to the forefront by fucking Sears and Nesquik. What?
They're the ones who go along to get along with anything because all they care about is dollars and cents. So
you'd literally...
No, they don't. They really don't, though. They have motivations that are, in this case, purely ideological. I don't think Jack Dorsey cares nearly so much about his bottom line as, say, the owners of Home Depot.
Literally just said we should deregulate industries. Okay, so he wants to deregulate industries when it comes to environmental protections, but he thinks that corporations are the enemy of the people when it comes to their woke BLM virtue signaling.
True. These are not mutually exclusive conditions.
But he also believes that corporations are people and that there's no real difference between corporations serving themselves and serving humanity.
True. Again, not mutually exclusive conditions.
But, yeah. This guy is this guy's like a compass that always points wrong.
Those aren't contradictory positions. And Mark Zuckerberg is the perfect example of this. Mark Zuckerberg thinks that he's doing something altruistic. He may be in large part. Bill Gates in the end did what he did. He amassed his empire so that he could engage in altruism afterwards, so that he can have these gigantic charities afterwards. Now, he may not actually be altruistic, but he thinks he is. He thinks he's doing something for something that extends beyond just the bottom, just the dollar, right? And on top of that, Michael Knowles can still say that Microsoft, who is motivated in the end by not just the bottom dollar, right? Bill Gates, who's not motivated in the end by the bottom dollar. Bill Gates, who basically is Microsoft, right? Or at least in that time was Microsoft for all intents and purposes. For all intents and purposes, we viewed them as one and the same entity, right? Yeah, he had a fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders, but he was doing that. He was upholding his fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders for altruistic purposes, not just because money printer go burr, right? So in that case, what Noel said about those first two things is absolutely true. That, corporations are people, because what are they made up of but people and their possessions? And that in the case of Microsoft, Microsoft should have less environmental regulations. Okay, so if Microsoft is having a hell of a time building a factory because of ridiculous inland wetlands refusal to actually allow them in, right? They're on top of a goddamn mountainside in the middle of a goddamn desert, and there's an inland wetlands commission that says we're not going to approve you because we hate you. Why do they have the ability to say we're not going to approve your project because we hate you? Like what is that? And when everyone who shows up at that inland wetlands commission meeting says, we want the jobs. And all of these people wind up getting, polling data seems to indicate that everybody in this community wants, and I mean everybody, unanimous consent, wants Microsoft to build their factory in this desert town. Well, why would that be the case? So you can say that if that regulation exists, that regulation should not exist, and you can say that the corporations is a person and it is nothing more than the people, and the possessions that those people is made up of nothing more than the people and their possessions. Is made up of people, nothing more than people and their possessions. So what's the difference here? I mean, we're making a distinction without a difference here. So, yeah, none of these things are logically inconsistent with each other.
This guy's amazing.
Well, it might be in their interest to embrace some stupid gender theory or something, but...
True, they might believe that is an altruistic motivation. Not
certainly
inconsistent.
Not in our interest. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. No, I disagree with that. You need broadcast for certain public functions, but...
Yeah, I need C-SPAN, okay? They're the only fucking news channel I can safely live stream on.
I do agree that we should probably pull some funding from those left-wingers.
Okay, I may be self-interested in this a bit, and self-serving in this a bit, but yes, that's... I'm not opposed to C-SPAN's mere existence. I'm not opposed to, if you're going to have a public meeting in an era where it's incredibly easy to share the content of that meeting with the public as it's happening from their homes. Okay.
Is it NPR? Our civil liberties are being...
Remember, his version of left-winger here is just person who says factual information. You're a left-winger to these people if you accurately cover information.
Excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. I disagree. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. I disagree with that because...
A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all of the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. That is actually an advantage. Well, I mean... No, because no. You want a lot of. You don't want government to be able to just instantaneously act on absolutely everything in a way that's just totally knee jerk. That's how you very quickly get to an extremely authoritarian position. That's why our founding fathers in this country built in terms of our government, the backlog. They clogged government on purpose with the way they built the Constitution, so that the legislative body couldn't just dump a law down on no notification.
We won the Cold War, so it seems like we had the advantage. Although,
so I wouldn't call it necessarily an advantage.
That is a tenuous connection at best. You think you won the Cold War because the Soviet Union was autocratic?
Kind of.
Not because of your superior economic capacity? Okay.
Oh, so communism doesn't work, huh, Vaush? Collectivized ownership of the means of production doesn't work, hey, Vaush? How'd that Soviet co-op work out?
The electronic age makes official surveillance easier. Only wrongdoers need to be worried.
False.
I strongly disagree.
Definitely
with that.
disagree. I'm sorry, Vaush, but if you don't agree with Knowles here, like, this is the Patriot Act. This is Knowles saying the Patriot Act was bad. So, just, like, I know your takes on this. I know you strongly disagree with this answer. I know that you align perfectly with Knowles on this matter based on what I've seen of your content. You are just lying. I haven't seen your response yet, but if your response is anything other than agree with Knowles perfectly, everything saying is right, you're lying to your audience.
You got the government blackmailing you for that weird thing that you do when you close the blinds? I don't think so. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes.
I'm sure this guy then has absolutely no issue whatsoever with the incredibly invasive surveillance and a violation of our First Amendment rights that the Trump administration has engaged in.
Here we go. All you had to do was say agree, man. Right? Like, he agrees with you on principle.
No?
Strongly agree with that. The purpose of criminal justice is justice. A secondary advantage of criminal justice is rehabilitation. A tertiary advantage is deterrence.
Wow. This guy's like an actual, caveman. That's amazing.
Here comes the ad hominem.
Oh yeah, dude, we pour tens of billions of dollars into the criminal justice system specifically so we can punish people for doing bad things.
It's obviously punitive in nature. How is it? I mean, let me adjust this camera here. How in the world is punishing somebody not punitive in nature?
You put it into A, separate criminals from non-criminal society, thus reducing potential harm. B, rehabilitate.
Harm. Here we go. That ambiguous term. Love it from the left.
And C, deter. Those are the reasons the criminal justice system exists. You're literally like a fucking monkey, dude. Like bring me more criminal skulls. It's funny because you just made the comment that there are some tribal societies that are less savage than the one we currently live in, and
which was a joke about what you're about to say.
I completely fucking agree. Troglodytes like you are unironically more savage than anything we've ever been able to find at any point in the fucking Americas prior, you know? With all the information, technology, and resources we have available to us today, people who would still defer towards fucking retribution as the primary motivator of our criminal justice system, these people are unevolved.
The nature of punitive damages is that it's punitive. The nature of punishing somebody is that it's punitive. Like, holy shit, Vaush. Like, this is just axiomatically true. A equals A here.
Like, this is a very, 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 like, simple skull-shaped cube, perhaps, somewhere in there.
But the point of it is the justice. It is retributive. It's you commit a crime.
I don't pay my tax dollars so the government can bludgeon people in fucking jail. That is not...
Is that what they're doing in jail? Is the government bludgeoning people in jail? Just willy-nilly? Like, I get it. If there's a brawl, obviously force needs to be used to break up the brawl. But is that honestly what you think do you honestly think that's what prison is? Just like prison guards just endlessly bludgeoning people until they're just mashed potatoes?
What I pay my tax dollars for.
Crime, you got to get punished for it. And hanging concentrates the mind wonderfully, as Dr. Johnson once observed.
Big smile. He's joking here, Vaush.
Absolutely barbaric. Just a barbaric, savage
Oh my
person.
God.
Unevolved.
A person who's smiling as he's obviously joking about something. Does Vaush not understand what a smile is? And he's calling Michael Knowles unevolved?
In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below.
He has to agree with this.
Below to be commanded. Well, all civilization has had hierarchy, so yes.
That's true. Hierarchies, even in civilizations that have gone to extraordinary lengths to get rid of hierarchies, they have naturally emerged. This is the sort of thing that emerges in the wild. You could establish hierarchies in organisms that clearly don't have agency. There are still some sort of hierarchy that evolves naturally through. I mean, if we're going to be absolutely reductionist when we talk about hierarchies, we could talk about the hierarchy of trees in a rainforest. The trees that are taller are going to get more sunlight. Therefore, they're going to grow faster. Therefore, they're going to be the hardier trees. There is going to be a natural hierarchy of trees that exists in a forest. This is completely unavoidable. So, in a civilized society, one must always have people to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. Now, that is a stretch in terms of how he's interpreting this question, but what he said is not untrue.
Of course. Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all.
Purely a matter of taste.
Well, this is a dumb question because...
Oh my God.
It is a dumb question because it's purely a matter of taste.
Abstract art, by definition, represents something. It's abstract, right? It's not a still life of an apple or something. It's abstract, so it is representative of something else. But very often, it's just complete nonsense. And right, that should not be considered art. In order for something to be art...
Knew it. Absolutely knew it. Authoritarians...
He's an authoritarian because he has bad taste.
They have to bite the bullet on this. Authoritarians generally believe that art either serves the interest of the race or nation, or it's degenerate.
Dude, Vaush, if I take a dump in a box, is my dump in a box art? I'm not going to give you any further context. Is my dump in a box art? If I take my dump in a box and bring it to the Met, and the Met decides for God knows what reason to put it on display, is that art? Or did I just take a dump in a box? Right. See, there's a matter of personal taste involved with answering this question. It's just pure taste. You might consider my dump in a box art. I don't. And there's no logical way to reason this out.
There's authoritarians hate art like this. If you take a look at the art of the Stalin era in the USSR or the art of like Nazi Germany, it's very, very propagandistic. It's very real.
Right, it's causal because there is some sort of correlation between the two. Not only do we have a causal link, we have a causal link from one to the other. Just because Nazis thought this way, Michael Knowles is a Vaush. Because Nazis there's a strong correlation between authoritarianism and the view of art this way. Okay, is it because the people who view art this way are authoritarians, or is it because authoritarians view art this way? Or is it because of something totally unrelated? Is it because there is another variable that needs to be controlled for, and that variable is the thing that's actually predicting both of these things, and it has nothing to do with authoritarianism, and it has nothing to do with Nazism. But here we go with the reductio ad Hitlerium.
Realistic, it's very romantic. It's stories of soldiers marching bravely into the unknown to conquer distant lands.
What are pictures of flowers? What are paintings of flowers? Do you think Michael Knowles thinks Georgia O'Keeffe's works are not art?
But then if you look at the art of the pre-Stalin era Soviet Union, or if you look at the art of the Weimar Republic, they were way more abstract, way more expressionist, way more surreal. And the reason for that is because surreal or abstract art encourage critical thinking. What is art? What does this say? The answer isn't given to you. You find the answer in the paint,
Right. And Knowles disagrees with that being art. Again, this is a matter of personal taste. That's it. That's all it is. And this question doesn't belong on this test as a result.
Text. And authoritarians hate that.
No. It has to be creative, not just a bunch of blotches that you randomly throw on a canvas. Not a well-phrased question, but I strongly agree.
Fucking knew it. Well, you can argue with curators about Jackson Pollock, okay?
And you can argue with curators about my dump in a box, Vaush. You know what? You know what? I'll take a dump in a box tonight, Vaush. I'll take a dump in a box tonight. And you know what? You send me your personal information, and I'll send you that dump in a box. And you can buy it from me for the price of what you would normally pay for a piece of art.
Justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Yeah. I just said that. It's like they're reading my mind. Yes, strongly.
Why? What does punishment do? What is the purpose of punishment? What is the point? If you think that punishment...
So he's talking about operant conditioning from B.F. Skinner's ridiculously, hyperbolically extreme interpretation of behaviorism. And this has been proved wildly untrue. Like, it doesn't work. The B.F. Skinner approach to behaviorism, where you never administer any punishment on anyone for anything, doesn't work. You have to, right? If you're trying to prevent a school shooter from shooting up the rest of the school, one of the most effective ways of doing that is to put a bullet in his fucking chest. And that is, in effect, the punishment for shooting up the school. In a more innocuous manner, there are times where what you have to do with your dog is swat him in the butt, right? And it's not a painful thing. It's just a quick whoosh to get his attention, right? And when I go whoosh, again, it doesn't hurt. It's just to get his attention. But that getting of his attention is something that the dogs, generally speaking, obviously would rather not have happen, or they would already be doing the thing. So in this case, you have punished the dog. In the case of children, a great punishment is, sorry, you don't eat. You know, mom, take this time to make dinner. You're 6 years old. Listen, starve. If you won't eat it, starve. I mean, assuming it's like spaghetti and meatballs, let's say. Something that's not just like mom cooked up actual feces. Mom cooked up dinner and you're refusing to eat because you're just refusing to eat, right? You're just being an obstinate jerk. Or if it's food, some food you've never tried before and you're just refusing to eat it because you've never tried it before. Okay, now you need to try new things. Or it's something you have tried before and we already know you like it. So you know what we're going to do? Fine, you want to eat it? You get nothing. You starve. Destiny agrees with me, by the way, on this. And this is, by all means, punishment for the thing. And when the kid gets really, really hungry, and I mean really, really hungry, eventually he'll come back down and say, Daddy, can I just have those spaghetti and meatballs? I'm really hungry. Sometimes punishment has to be instituted.
It is value because it rehabilitates criminals. Then rehabilitation is the ultimate goal there. Punishment can be useful if it's...
No. Punishment is... Rehabilitation being the ultimate goal. Removing somebody from society is a punishment unto itself. Humans have a natural urge, a natural desire to be members of a group, to be members of the free society. This is a natural thing. Even Maslow acknowledged this. There is a social element to your needs, right? You want to engage socially, not just with a bunch of criminals that you've been forced to engage with, but with people you want to engage with. We want to be free people in the world. People celebrate when they get out of jail. They don't get all depressed and mopey that they've gotten out of jail. People look forward to the day that their sentence is over. And in many cases, just pulling this person off the streets tells them, man, jail sucks. Like, even if jail doesn't suck, the fact that, like, you're not a member of the society that you choose to actually be a member of. Like, the fact that a Guatemalan comes to the United States because because Guatemala sucks and they want to come to the United States. So a serious punishment to that person would be to send them right back to Guatemala. Well, they'd obviously rather be in the United States because they went through hell to get here in the United States. So, like, what are we talking about here, Vaush? Like, of course it is a form of punishment to send somebody to prison. Of course it is. Of course it is. And that punishment tends to act to prevent recidivism to a certain degree. Now, there's a reason people commit crimes in the first place. And that's the reason there's such a high rate of recidivism. Degenerates are going to be degenerates. And there's very little that prevents degenerates from becoming degenerates. Now, if we're talking about a drug addict, yes, I agree that when they are in prison, there should be a rehabilitation for that addiction, right? Because how in the world are you going to ensure in any way that the thing isn't going to happen again if that addiction isn't removed? Now, when it comes to just somebody committed a crime without the addiction, we know that the addiction is the root problem here. Well, what's the root problem when somebody commits a crime that isn't just a matter of addiction? We don't know. There's no way to know, right? So there's no great way to rehab a lot of this. And when I say we don't know, I'm not saying that necessarily in that particular case. I mean, what causes people to actually engage in this particular crime? I don't know. It's a really difficult thing to answer. And that answer has to come from within. And I'm sorry, but like, the primary goal is to just pull them off the streets for a certain period of time. And by pulling them off the streets for a certain period of time, this is a punishment. And for most of the people that engage in this, these people are functioning brain-wise on a really low level. In terms of their development of moral character and their ethics, it's a really low functioning thing. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to break the law because if I break the law, I will be punished. That's a very low level of thinking. And that's how most of these criminals actually engage with the thing. So I guess in the end, what that means is to prevent crime from being on the street. And I suppose that in a certain way, a sentence of a certain amount of time. I mean, if you're serving like 6 days in prison, that's nothing more than punishment. There's no rehabilitation that's going to take place there, right? The fundamental root cause of why it is you did what you did is never going to be addressed in a 6-day sentence. You need months at the very least, if not probably years. And these sort of rehabilitations, once people are adults, they just, for the most part, don't work. This is why even the most, when it comes to addiction, like alcoholism, there is no magic bullet. There is no thing that tends to curate this. There is no curative thing that for alcoholism. It's you have to make a conscious decision for yourself to not do the thing, and it's a really hard thing to do, and it's usually completely ineffective. So I'm not so sure that rehabilitation is the goal here. Why the hell would rehabilitation be the goal? I thought the goal was to reduce crime, and of course, the punitive nature of our criminal justice system means that what we're doing is talking about is a punishment.
Serves rehabilitation, but if it doesn't, what's the point? It makes them feel good. That's it.
It pulls them off the streets. If we got a serial murderer here, right, and we hang him, let's say, how many more murders is that guy going to commit? Let's say we hang him at high noon, right? We have an infinite amount of evidence. We know we are God. We are omniscient. And we are all knowing, omniscient, omnipresent, and infallible. And we know this guy did it, and we know he's going to do it again. I would say that I would say that the whole point of any sort of criminal punishment or in criminal justice is to prevent crimes from happening, right? Or to stop crimes from happening. And if the punitive nature of that justice system is the thing that makes it not happen, right? Like, man, that time in jail really sucked. I'd rather not have to go back to jail, so I'm not going to do the thing. Or, hey, we had to hang him. Or, hey, this guy got life in prison. He can't be back on the streets. And that's not rehabilitation. That's just making sure the crime doesn't happen again. And I'm not so sure that rehabilitation is the pathway to prevent that from happening. Nor am I so sure that telling people that, jail's going to be a good time, that jail's going to be just like a 3-star hotel experience. How in the world is that going to help? How in the world is that going to tell people, don't commit crime? Well, all of these people that function in this ridiculously low order of thinking in terms of their moral codes and their code of ethics, which they obviously are functioning at a low level if they're routinely committing serious crimes. That's self-evidently true. Are they ever going to make that connection that, man, if I do this crime, something bad's going to happen? No.
It makes their peepees feel good, so we can jerk off imagining all the fucking black people in jail for fucking marijuana.
Again, ascribing the worst possible motivation.
It's a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. What do they mean by that? Do they mean some criminals are beyond rehabilitation? That's true. But do they mean that we shouldn't rehabilitate any criminals? No, that's crazy.
It said some. Wait, what do you mean any? It said some right there.
That's true. That's true. Knowles gets this wrong. It doesn't say any. It doesn't say rehabilitate criminals. It says rehabilitate some criminals. So, yes, he should be saying agree.
How do you... It said some. Right there, it says some. This man is literally subliterate.
Subliterate? He's reading the thing.
The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Well, yes, in that they keep the blood moving through our economy, right? They keep things going. If you didn't have people to come and fix your toilet, then civilization would collapse in about a week or so. But of course, when we think about civilization, we think about culture. That's what defines a civilization. So I will disagree with that. Everybody has a role to play.
Okay.
Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. I assume by homemaker, they're not just referring to making sandwiches. I assume by homemaker, they're referring to raising children. If you're a mother, then you do have a responsibility to raise children, and it's more important, if you have children, than making some widget at a factory. So sure, yeah, I agree with that. Again.
I like how... So this guy wants his women barefoot and pregnant.
Oh my God. That's, again, it's assuming the worst interpretation of what he just said. The worst possible interpretation of what he just said, right? He just said that that mothers' first duty is to their children. Okay, fathers' first duty is to their children as well. Sometimes serving that duty means that you have to go earn bread, that you have to go to work. But obviously, like Vaush, you are an evil person if you disagree with the notion that the parents' first duty, and under all circumstances, when their children are children, is to their children. Like, that's duty number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like all of their top 5 obligations are their children. Like, their life becomes their children, unless they're degenerates. And again, Vaush, if you disagree with this, you're just downright evil. You're just downright evil. And like, this is all, that's all Knowles is saying. So this is how Knowles is interpreting that question: is should parents have an obligation to their kids, right? Mothers may have careers, okay, but their first duty is to be homemakers. And he's interpreting homemakers to mean parents. But their first duty is to their children. Okay, maybe you disagree with that interpretation, but that's his interpretation. And if that's his interpretation, you have to agree with that position, with that normative claim.
Like, that's what he wants. But he knew that he couldn't just say that, so he had to imagine.
So he didn't say that. Holy shit. Again, you're ascribing the worst possible motivation to him.
Imagine that this question was presupposing that the mother already has a child. So he's like, oh, well, obviously.
Because mothers have... That's the definition of a mother, is a woman with children, is a woman who has a child. Holy shit. The definition of a bachelor is an unmarried man. Oh my God.
If you already have a kid, you should prioritize being a parent, which nobody would disagree with. It's more. And
instead you're finding some straw man way to disagree with this position that he's probably not going to hold.
More of an abstract question about whether or not women should prioritize careers or homemaking.
Okay. So now you're using words that aren't there.
What is even the anarchist answer to this question? Whoever wants to raise the kid should raise the kid. Just doesn't have anything to do with being a woman. It's that simple. Oh, well, Vaush, you aren't a mother if you have a child. Yeah, but then why wouldn't the father take care of the kid? I'm sorry, I misphrased. He wasn't presupposing that the mother is a kid. He was presupposing that the mother didn't have anyone else who could take that responsibility.
Oh my God. You are a mother. Your responsibility is to your kid. You're a father. Your first responsibility is to your kid. Vaush, you are fucking evil. You are fucking evil. I hope to God you never have kids, because that kid is going to grow up in a terrible household. If you are intimating right now that a parent's first obligation is not necessarily to their kids. No, a parent's first obligation is to their kids. Obviously, once the kids are 30 and grown up and moved out of the house, then that's not the case. But when we're talking about 6-year-old kids, obviously that's what we're talking about. Obviously, their first obligation is to their kids, and anything else anything contradictory to that position, I'm sorry, it's just evil. It's just evil, and there's no other way to describe it.
What if it had said fathers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers? Do you think he would have said agree as well?
If we were to take him at his word, yes, Vaush. If we are engaging in good faith, yes, Vaush.
And poorly phrased, I wouldn't use their phrasing, but
right.
This test obviously was written by a lib.
This test was written by somebody who's capable of writing at an 8th grade level, and you were clearly not capable of reading at an 8th grade level.
Says the guy who somehow connects women with mothers as identical terms.
You are not smarter than this test.
And somehow believes that a mother could possibly not have a child.
Test, my dude. You are so smug. You're like a 13-year-old on Facebook.
He's smug? Who are we watching right now? Do you own a mirror? You're on camera right now. I have a monitor. I have another monitor. I have another monitor. Do you not watch yourself in your own monitors?
It is unbelievable how unearned your fucking your sense of confidence is here. It's unimaginable to me how
right
any human being could be this stupid and
right
still
back at you, Vaush.
Yeah, Shapiro said the same thing. The thing is that fucking subhumanly stupid troglodytes like this guy, they read
Vaush.
quizzes like this, and because they don't immediately understand everything because of their low IQ,
or because they're capable of understanding that some words have multiple meanings, or they're capable of understanding that there are phrases in words that have multiple meanings. Get this, and that context may not be sufficient to determine what the intent of the author is. Hello.
They assume that the test is biased against them in some way.
Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Nah, give me a break. Strongly disagree.
Yeah, that one was too lib for him. That one was too high IQ for him.
Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing companies. Okay, so the plant genetic resources, which are the soils of developing countries. So the plant genetic resources. So these are we're making resources out of the genes from plants. Are unethically exploiting that. Oh, okay. Medical research companies are taking plants and they're using them in unethical ways to conduct medical research. Whatever.
He doesn't know what that means. I guarantee you that if I tried to ask him, like, what does exploiting the plant genetic resources mean? He would say, is that a part of critical race theory? He doesn't.
Again. Oh my God. Again, ascribing the worst possible motivations. Perhaps I got this question wrong in terms of how I interpreted that phrase, that phraseology, right? But where on earth do you get interpreting that as critical race theory? Like, again, we're assuming the worst possible motivations here. Good faith.
Doesn't know.
Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity.
He has to agree with this one.
I do agree with that. Yeah. Little kids want to rebel against everything, and they're like rebels without a cause, and they're pissed off at their...
And, the founding fathers of the United States, and,
He said rebel against everything, and without cause is what he was implying. Oh my God. Oh my God. The amount of bad faith going on here is just like mind-numbing.
The civil rights protesters, and the suffragettes, and every civil rights movement in the history of humanity. Just
right. But we should rebel against everything here, Vaush. That's what he's suggested. Is it a good idea to rebel against literally everything? Is it okay to rebel against Vaush? Vaush is king for a day. Is it okay to rebel against Vaush and his principles? Is it okay to, even if he's not a king, is it okay for me to rebel against Vaush? Is that okay? And let's say, Vaush, we lived in the perfect society. You're a dream society. Absolutely everything is functioning exactly the way you'd want it to be. Is it okay to rebel from that?
Just children, yes.
Parents, and it's much more mature, however, to recognize that you didn't just pop into being and out of thin air. You come from a tradition, and maybe you want to improve that tradition, sure, but you have to reconcile yourself to reality before you can do that.
The question wasn't, do you recognize that you come from reality? The question was about making peace with authority.
Who are the first authority figures that a child runs into? I'm not even going to follow that up because Jesus Christ, Vaush, answer that question. Who are the first two authority figures that most children run into in the course of their lives?
Astrology accurately explains many things. So this one maybe could be unexpected. I think that's possibly true.
I knew it. The authoritarian mind believes in a...
That's not true at all. That's not true at all. I want a source on this, Vaush, because every bit of research I've read on this suggests that astrology is much more closely linked with the left-wing mind. Much more closely linked with people who describe themselves nowadays as socialists or communists.
Essentialist personality traits. I've talked about this before, but this is consistently true. This is consistently true. You wouldn't expect a guy who looks like this would agree with this, but the reason for that is very, very clear. Fascists and other...
Because he's a fascist. Here we go. Reductio ad Hitlerium again. Huh? Hey, Vaush, he's not a Leninist Marxist, right? He's not Chairman fucking Mao. He's not left somehow of Chairman fucking Mao. Therefore, he's Hitler.
The authoritarians love the occult. And the reason for that is because they're obsessed with the idea of people's minds and bodies being determined by pre-existing physical conditions.
Minds and bodies being predetermined by physical conditions. So that would be determinism, Vaush. That would be the entire basis for critical race theory. The idea that, like, what you are born into, the physical world that you are born into, is unchanging. That it is impossible to, in the case of somebody born into poverty, it's impossible for them to break out of that poverty.
Rather than them being determined by social conditions. Sociology is the enemy of these people. They despise sociology. What was the name of that Nazi who wrote a big treatise on how sociology is useless? It was like in the 1980s or 90s.
So everyone who agrees that sociology is useless is a Nazi. Here we go. More reductio ad Hitlerium.
American Nazi. Does anyone know what I'm referring to here?
Who in your mind, other than Chairman fucking Mao, Vaush, and you, because obviously you don't think you're a Nazi because Nazi bad, right? Who isn't a Nazi? Who? Name somebody who disagrees with you on anything that you would never describe as a Nazi based on what you know of them.
Got like a half memory of...
Is Stephen Bonnell, is Destiny a Nazi?
This. He wrote this big thing on how sociology is a useless field. And the reason for that is, of course, because they don't want you focusing on the actual reasons why people are the way they are.
That wouldn't necessarily be sociology. We could easily be talking about social psychology or just psychology.
They want you to think it's all race and nation.
It could be
yeah,
economics.
I think it was Rockwell.
Like, I'm not someone to totally write off astrology. The Bible tells us not to consult astrologers, not because astrology is totally, completely without any merit or reality. They tell us not to because it's evil and it compromises our free will. So I guess I don't know, does it accurately explain many things?
It actually does compromise free will to think that way. But hey, Vaush, so what? Like, you are in alignment with if we're going to do if you're going to do the exact reductio that you've been doing, right? So astrologism, if we're going to call it an ism, is a form of determinism. Vaush is an absolutist determinist, and he's intimated this I can't tell you how many numbers of times I've seen him be a vocal advocate for determinism. So Vaush is deterministic. Astrologists are deterministic. Therefore, Vaush is an astrologist. If we're going to use his logic.
What does astrology do? You mean the things you read in the newspaper, or astrology?
I can't fathom the inside of this guy's brain right now.
Suggesting that there is some rhythm to the universe. I guess I would have to agree, but I would encourage you.
There we go.
Never consult astrologers. You cannot be moral without being...
So I think his answer is that astrology is real, but you shouldn't consult witches because their witchcraft deceives and misleads you. Is that the answer? It's real, but it's evil? Is that... Okay.
Religious.
Murder is real. Also, it's evil.
You can be accidentally moral, and most people who say they're not religious are very religious. The actor Idris Elba just said that the Earth, which is a rock, by the way, gave us coronavirus because it's pissed off that we're throwing litter into the streets, or we're throwing plastic to the baby turtles. So that's a very religious idea. That's called pantheism. Some people say they're not...
I think that might have been more an alliterative comment about how the conditions which led to coronavirus were rooted heavily in animal exploitation and urban...
So you're willing to go take the principle of charity to a naive and ridiculous extreme with that comment, but you're only willing to engage with Michael Knowles with the exact opposite, where you're ascribing to him the most ill motivation possible with everything he says.
Industrialization? That's not what pantheism is?
Religious at all, but actually men can become women because your body...
You claim to be an atheist, Mr. Liberal, but you say a man can become a woman? Clearly...
Straw man, here we go. Not what he's going, not even close to what he's arguing.
Only magic can produce that transition.
I've done this one before, but
excuse me, liberal. Can something be blue and yellow at the same time? No? They're opposites?
Well, kind of opposites.
Well, what if you...
Hold on, time out, Vaush. Can a human being be a dog? Show me how a human being can be a dog. Can a human being be a toaster? Show me how a human being can be a literal toaster. Not a figurative toaster, not a metaphorical toaster. Show me how it can be done. Show me how I can take this lens cap right here. Show me how I can take that lens cap and make it a fish. An actual living, underwater breathing fish.
How did you do that? How did you do? Which?
How does a sperm become an egg, Vaush? How does a sperm become an egg? How does an egg become a sperm, Vaush? I want you to actually answer these questions, because this is how we define sex, by gamete. And there are, as far as I know, 2 types of gamete. Sperm and egg. 2 types, at least in humans, sperm and egg. And there's never been a human being that could possibly ever produce both. Not ever. Not at one time in their life, not at separate times in their life. It has never happened. It will never happen. It cannot possibly ever happen because of the nature of biology here. So Vaush, tell me how you make a sperm an egg, or an egg a sperm. Either way.
I love they do this all the time. They're like you think men can be women? Well, I think people who identify as men can identify as women. Like later they can.
I think a bachelor can identify as married.
See, there's a temporal element here. You're one and then you're the other. Things change. I was once 4 feet tall. I'm now 6'2". My hair used to be...
I was once a human. Now I'm a refrigerator.
Lighter.
Can a blonde be a brunette? No.
Well, a blonde can age and their hair gets darker. Like, it's such a simplistic, such like a juvenile understanding of the world.
It has nothing to do with who
Right, so tell me how an alligator can become an Apache attack helicopter.
You really are. That's a religious idea that's called Gnosticism.
That's not what Gnosticism is or means.
So their morality, which is a perverted morality, that has a basis in religion. Strongly agree. Charity is better than Social Security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Who's disadvantaged? I mean, that's loaded terminology anyway.
True.
Charity is better in that...
What is your argument against morality not existing within the foundation of religion? Dude, Okay, wait, hold on. We can go over a couple points in this. Morality doesn't stem from religion. Even if you believe in religion, morality still doesn't stem from it without a presupposition you have to make.
And most people would describe those presuppositions, those axiomatic principles, those a prioristic positions that cannot possibly be argued because you have to hold them as a prioristically true. That you have to hold them as axiomatically true. Those axioms are the tenets of any sort of religion. Most people would say that by holding those tenets as axiomatic truths, we have engaged, we hold them true by a matter of faith. We have faith in these axioms and these a prioristic positions. That's why we believe in them. And there's no logical rationale for it. It's just an element of faith. And this conversion from faith, these holdings of axiomatic principles, these conversions of a faith-based position to a logical position, right? That concept is the notion of religion and the purpose that religion serves.
If you believe in an all-powerful God, you have to believe in fucking divine command theory in order for you to believe that the commandments of those gods, or of that God, is like the moral word of the world.
Then what you're doing is you're engaging with a singular type of God that is only the God that exists in your mind, Vaush. See, I'm not going to be the one that says that God exists. I am the person that says, I don't know. I have no way of answering that question. I don't know how to answer that question. But if we're going to define God as, say, the ethereal notion of all the things that we define as good, clearly that ethereal notion exists, right? We may not be able to actually describe that thing. We may not, as human beings, because we're flawed, be able to ever achieve those things. We may not even be able to prescribe perfectly into law what those things are. We may not even be able to perfectly describe, and just in terms of a moral or ethic sense, what that code is, right? There may be such a thing as objective truth, but as human beings, because we're flawed, we are incapable of achieving it. We are incapable of putting it down on paper, right? So I'm not going to say that's how I necessarily define God, but if that's how people who think the phrase God is good isn't a way of describing God, but is a way of defining God, as in God is the ethereal notion of all things good. God is goodness. Then, okay, I mean, that seems plausible. I mean, if your definition of God, Vaush, is nothing more than a flying spaghetti monster, and there's no other version of the concept of God that could possibly exist, if that's what you're looking for, I think you're going to be disappointed.
Like, there's always some sort of axiomatic or epistemological presupposition that you have to make.
Right.
Always.
And you hold those positions religiously because they're based on faith.
That charity is a moral exchange. So when I give charity, some guy asks me for charity, I feel the grace, the goodness, the virtue of that act of charity. The beggar feels gratitude to me for what I did, and that's a nice moral relationship. Taxation, which is what they're talking about here with Social Security, there is no moral relationship. I think Dinesh D'Souza once explained this as the beggar.
This is actually, first of all, if you ever cite Dinesh D'Souza for anything, you have completely...
Dinesh D'Souza, hold on, Vaush. Dinesh D'Souza has said that gravity exists. Dinesh D'Souza has said the world is round and not flat. So therefore, Vaush, you agree that the world is flat and gravity doesn't exist.
Completely invalidated your own argument. But second of all, I think this actually perfectly explains the opposite of his point, if you think about it. He's saying that he prefers charity because it relies on kindness as opposed to taxation, which just relies on an amoral mechanism of government. Motherfucker, I do not want the well-being of people in my country to be determined by how nice richer people are feeling on that day. I want their well-being to be a secure, guaranteed facility of the country's functioning. I don't want...
This is such a profound misunderstanding of economics. Like, you want people to be altruistic. And that warm, fuzzy feeling they get through their altruism is what makes them altruistic, right? It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the highest level of that. That's self-actualization. People are going to want to do that, right? But if they don't have any method by which they garner that warm, fuzzy feeling, Vaush, they're not going to do the thing. That need, that warm, fuzzy feeling is not going to be satisfied ever. So they won't do the thing that's not going to satisfy that need. Of course you want people to try to be altruistic. Of course you want reasonable, decent human beings. This is one of the ways you can make reasonable, decent human beings. And to be fair, if you just tax the crap out of people and then give that to people who haven't done anything to exchange for that thing, then all you've done is given a man a fish. You haven't taught a man to fish. This person is not going to be, they're going to be completely dependent on that handout. And on top of that, it's not encouraging them in any way to do a thing that they could then use to exchange, right? So not only are we building a crappier society by extinguishing charity, not only are not only are we extinguishing a certain element of virtue in our society by doing what you're obviously prescribing, we already know that people are going to engage in this charity, in this altruism. People are going to engage in this charity. And by the way, that's why charitable contributions in states and in small, because it's never been tried in the federal level, but that's why charitable contributions, if you look at the very small and very atomized level, are much greater than contributions. They're proportionate and relative contributions from government. And if you just tax everyone to death, there's not going to be anything to be charitable towards. There's not going to be a supply of money. If you just say, hey, you want to get rich? Fuck you. Well, that money represents something. That represents a level of productivity. And if people aren't going to be productive, and if they have no incentive for being productive, they're not going to be productive. We know this in the classroom. Vaush, you went to college, right? You went to college. Did you ever have a group project? There were 5 people in the group. Who does all the work? Yeah, one person does all the work because you're all going to get the same grade no matter what. So as long as one person shires the load and does barely enough to get, say, a B+, everyone gets a B+. Why the hell would anyone else work in that? But we know this in the workplace. If everyone makes the exact same amount, no matter what, can't be fired, has no hope of making more money. What are they going to do? Are they going to be more productive? No. Are you going to fire the ones that are less productive and retain the ones that are more productive? No. So what you wind up doing, of course, Vaush, is you wind up washing one hand with the other, and you just go broke on this.
I want kindness to have anything to do with it. I want these people to have the time and room and space and money to build kindness of their own with interpersonal reactions of their own.
If there's no ways to engage, if there's no reward for that kindness, why would they do it?
Not for all the kindness they see in their lives to be determined by the generosity and fucking tax write-off benefits wealthy people get when they donate to charities.
Then they won't donate.
Asks me for my sandwich. I'm eating my sandwich and enjoying it. And then Barack Obama rides up on a white horse and points a gun at my head and says, give the beggar your sandwich. I don't feel the act of charity because I didn't choose to give charity. The beggar doesn't feel gratitude. He feels entitlement. And
I think people are entitled to sandwiches. Yeah.
That is evil. That is downright evil. You are not entitled to my labor. That is slavery. That is just plain out slavery. Like, this is downright evil. Like, when we're talking about entitled, there's a huge difference between the word earned and entitled. There's a huge difference between the words earned and deserved, right? Why is that person entitled to that sandwich? Why isn't that person entitled to his horse? Why isn't that person entitled to his human being? Everything that Michael Knowles in that situation works towards, everything. Why can't the beggar have it? I've brought up this thought experiment to a number of people a number of times. But if you've got a desert island, right, the proverbial island, let's say it's not a desert island, it's a tropical island, right? One guy decides that he's going to, 2 guys are on the opposite sides of the island. They don't know the other. One doesn't know the other exists. One guy is going to, scrounge around and scrape by on whatnot, and the shellfish that he can scrounge on the beach. The other guy says, you know what? I'm going to take 2 days and I'm going to starve myself for a little bit. It's going to suck for those 2 days, but I'll make it. And in those 2 days, I'm going to fashion myself a fishing pole, rod, reel, etc. And in doing so, he's able to catch fish. And because he can catch fish, he now gets way more food. And he's got way more nutrition. And because he can get way more food in the same amount of time, he doesn't have to devote as much time to fishing. And now he can fashion himself a house. And then once he has shelter built for himself, he can devote, he'll be able to sleep better, which means he doesn't have to devote as much time to sleep, right? Instead of getting, 12 hours a day of sleep because he's so tired from having crappy sleep all the time. He can get good sleep because he has a shelter. So he only needs like 8-10 hours of sleep. He can be more productive. In the end, one person is going to be in his loincloth, scrounging around for shellfish, and the other person is going to be the Swiss Family Robinson, right? So what happens, though, when the guy who is just scrounging has just been given a fish? Is he ever going to have more than that one fish? How about the guy who's fishing? If you give him the rod and the reel, like this is the second half of the parable of the fish, right? Not only is the parable of the fish meant to tell you that like teaching somebody a new skill is more valuable than giving them the fruit of that skill, right? More important to that is that they'll never climb out of their own poverty. They'll never expect more than that fish. They'll never do anything other than just sit on ass and expect the fish to come in. This is an evil way of thinking. This is a downright evil way of thinking. That the guy on the side of the island that just took the fish is owed something by the guy on the other side of the island who took the rod and reel. That's just evil. Like, that guy went through a ton of effort to fashion himself that rod and reel. That's just
I'll
evil.
fucking say it, yeah. If you're wealthy and you're shelling out fucking 98% of your upper fucking tax threshold to the government, which they redistribute, yeah, the people who get that money are entitled to it. Fuck you.
Fuck you. Fuck you. You are not entitled to my labor. You and Henry Clay are in agreement here that, yes, slavery is a good thing. You are the evil person that is siding with the South when they said that slavery was a good thing, right? And they said slavery was a good thing because black. You're saying slavery is a good thing because rich. Why should they be slaves? Why are you due the fruits of their labor? Why are you in charge of their labor? That is just slavery. This is something they obviously aren't consenting to. And you're taking their labor from them. That is nothing more than an indenture of servitude.
You're not entitled to shit, fucking wealthy, rich-ass boy. You think that sandwich is yours? That sandwich is the people. Did you fucking till the wheat to make the bread? Did you fucking grow the cow to make the...
No! Of course not! But the person who does all that, is that theirs? Did they get to hold on to that wheat, or does the master get to hold on to that wheat? And then the master redistributes it as he sees fit, because it's the communities. It's society's wheat and flour.
The salami, or whatever the fuck salami's made out of, it's our sandwich. Did you milk the cow for the cheese? Did you?
So the person who milked the cow, did they get to keep that milk? Is that their milk, or is that our milk? Is your videos and the revenue you derive from your videos, is that your money, Vaush, or is that my money? Is that our money? I deserve your money, Vaush.
You grow the lettuce? No. We all worked on it together. Give me my fucking sandwich back.
Obama feels that he's done something
disgusting, absolutely disgusting, and fucking downright evil. Downright evil. The person who made that flour exchanged that flour for something else. The fruits of his labor were satisfied. He did the thing, he exchanged it. He doesn't then get to steal everything that he... If I'm the miller and I'm buying the flour and I'm buying the oats from the oat farmer, right? And I'm going to mill that into flour. When I give him the money for those oats, the guy that just gave me the oats doesn't get to come to my mill and then steal back the money. That's evil.
Something productive, even though he's done nothing at all other than point a gun at my head.
Well, he's given a homeless man a sandwich. Even in his own stupid hypothetical, he can't recognize the fact that now the homeless person doesn't starve to death.
And instead he does.
Isn't that nice? This guy can just...
Oh yeah, it's so nice when we're picking favorites here about who gets to starve to death.
Go buy another sandwich. The homeless guy couldn't buy...
Until he stops being able to just go buy another sandwich.
A sandwich. I assume he's probably not doing great financially.
I guess I would have to agree.
Okay.
Some people are naturally unlucky. Yeah.
They always have to... Again, essentialism is a component of the authoritarian mind.
His cursor is on agree. His cursor is on agree.
They have to always say yes to this. And the reason they do this is because it's an explanation to them for why some people end up down in the...
Or it's because it's an obvious reflection of reality. Some people are unlucky. Again, we're going to describe the worst possible motivations rather than saying, hey, listen, maybe he's rational. Maybe he actually gets this one right.
The dredges and the dirt in the ditch, and why some people end up getting wealthy fucking gig jobs at the Daily Wire, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. Agree. Strongly agree. People have disadvantages. Sometimes our suffering can become a great advantage because it deepens our understanding of the world. It is important.
That has nothing to do with the question, but okay.
That my child's school instills religious values. I strongly agree. The trouble is, in public schools, they're instilling all the wrong kind of religious values.
Smiling. He's joking.
What religious values are they instilling in schools?
They're instilling gender theory.
That's not a religion.
In pre-kindergarten in Brooklyn.
They're treating it like a religion. If it walks like a duck.
You're instilling gender theory from fucking day one when you dress your infant in pink or in blue clothing, depending on which little jiggly bit of flesh it has between its legs, okay?
No, that's not what gender theory is. Jesus Christ. You're engendering a societal norm, but that's not what gender theory is.
Okay? You're the one who starts the gender indoctrination, my dude. Schools just explain the world as it is.
That's really happening right now. They instill all sorts of madness. Very often they instill a hatred of one's country.
Again, this guy's a nationalist, so you have to...
So is there Vaush, in your perfect society, in your perfect nation, in your dream utopian version of a nation, right? Should you like that nation? Or should you be vitriolically and violently axiomatically opposed to its mere existence? Is there ever any version of a nation that you can like? Because the way you're describing nationalism here is just somebody likes their own country and therefore evil. You like Bernie Sanders, you're going to vote for him. If there were 100 members of the Senate who were Bernie Sanders and 435 members of Congress who are Bernie Sanders and a president who is Bernie Sanders enacting exactly the policies you're looking for, and everyone who is all 330 million people were Bernie Sanderses, because we could somehow, let's say, clone Bernie Sanders instantaneously and spread him throughout the country. Is that a good nation?
Expect this. This is, if people like this are put in power, that's why you get like the 1776 commission. That's like
the 1776 commission was there just to debunk the nonsense of the 1619 project. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Have you ever seen like a little boy being put in shirts like Lady Lover and shit like that? Oh, dude, there's some cringy ass shit that goes on with hets and their fucking kids, you know? Yeah, or like the 2-year-old plays at the playground, and after they come back, you're like, who's that girlfriend you met? Because they talk to some other blubbling little fucking disease magnet baby on the other.
Oh my God. You are actually just evil, dude. This is just some innocuous things that have taken millions of years to evolve out into us. This sort of playful games that you play with your children are things that every culture, every society ever to have existed and still exists today engage in. You're just evil, Vaush.
Other side of the playground for 2 seconds. Yeah, fucking hets. Ree! It's true, though.
They instill a hatred of one's civilization.
Again, this is dog whistling. I don't know how else to...
Because everything's a dog whistle, isn't it, Vaush?
This is absolutely. Yeah, liberal public schools are telling you how to hate your civilization and your nation. If he said hate your race, it would be more obvious.
But he didn't say race.
But when you're talking about civilization, and then you're working for a publication that talks about how the gains and benefits of Western civilization are predominantly from white people, it's pretty...
No, they have never made that connection, Vaush. Dude, I watch a ton of Daily Wire. They have never made that connection. They've never said that the fruits of Western civilization are related to melanin. No. At most, you've seen guests like Sargon talk about the English Enlightenment, and they describe them as English. And then you'll notice that when Sargon does that, he never says the word white. He talks about English, right? He talks about British culture. He never talks about race when he brings that up. It's not a dog whistle. It's not him signifying to people that we should become Nazis and terrorize the Jews. Like, again, you have to read into this the worst possible motivations. And I don't even, at this point, I'm not even calling them possible. It's just the worst imaginable motivations.
Pretty clear what you're suggesting. The only obligation schools have is to tell the truth. And notice how he's not accusing them of telling lies. He's only saying he doesn't like the truth they tell.
So I do...
No, he's saying that critical race theory is bullshit, which is implying that it's a lie.
I agree that it's...
Sorry, America is just so unlikable, dipshit.
It's important. We just got to make sure they're...
He disagrees with you that it's unlikable.
They're teaching the right religious values. Sex outside marriage is usually immoral. Strongly agree. A same-sex couple in a
That's not what your mom was telling me last night, Michael.
Oh my God.
stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption. Well, I suppose you got to weigh the alternatives here. Are you talking about a world in which there are zillions of newborn babies who are being put up for adoption and not enough homes for those newborn babies?
What about the world we're in right now, Michael? What about the world we're
This is kind of fair.
in currently, which is the world where you're taking this test? What about the world we're currently in?
To be adopted into? Because that's not the world we live in. The world we live in, there
Oh, and then Michael Knowles points that out.
are 32 couples waiting to adopt for every newborn that's put up for adoption in the United States.
And yet there are tons of unadopted kids. Usually because the parents who want to adopt only want to adopt a very specific kind of kid.
Oh my God. No, it has nothing to do with the fact that in order to get a kid, you have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to the adoption agency. You have to go through unbelievable amounts of regulatory hurdles. There's a mountain of red tape, and it typically takes a couple who doesn't even care what the race of the baby is, because I know that's what Vaush is intimating, right? And even if I don't know that, let's say I'm just putting that prerequisite. They don't care what kid it is they adopt. They just want to adopt a kid. Typically, this takes months at the very least. And the last I looked, and I could be wrong about this, and I'm happy to be correct about this. I'm happy to admit that this might be wrong. But the last I saw, it was 2 to 3 years for a couple to successfully adopt a child. And again, it typically takes tens of thousands of dollars to get that to happen. Most couples who go through the adoption process, who begin the adoption process at least, or at least consider adoption, don't wind up adopting because of other regulatory hurdles that they have to go through.
The people who want to adopt kids usually want to adopt healthy, able-bodied, young...
He's going to say white.
White...
He doesn't know that race is not usually he doesn't realize that when you go out to fill out the adoption papers, the race is not even on for almost from. And when it comes to adoption agencies, race is almost never on that list.
Girls, mostly. That's the specific collection of combination, like the combination of characteristics they're looking to get, you know?
Yeah, that's they want white. The majority of people say they want white.
What they want. So what about all the other kids?
So at that point, you have to come to a decision. What is the best place for a child to be raised in? And if you believe that men and women are different,
I knew where we're getting at this.
And they complement one another, and that a child ought to have a right to a mother and father, then surely you have to disagree with this question.
I know you do. Just say you're disgusted by gay people, okay? By the way, there's been plenty of data, plenty of studies done on this. There is no evidence that having gay parents leads to a disadvantaged upbringing in any way. The idea that like one man, one woman is the right way to raise children, do you think that's how they were raising children in medieval Europe?
Yes. Maybe not the nobility, but obviously the peasantry. That's how they were doing this.
Do you think it was just one man, one woman? First of all, the men were all dead because they kept getting recruited to fight in the 100 Years' War. They were
in that one location, and not really. They died by the age of like 30, 35. True. Also, moms died in childbirth all the time because everybody died at the age of like 30, 35. And no, that's just not true that all of these men, when all of them went out to the 100 Years' War and never were home.
Were usually raised by like uncles and mothers. People would die all the time. Moms would die during childbirth.
Because it was a miserable time of existence. People died all the time. Like
childbirth, you get raised by grandparents. You would get raised by your neighbors. You would get raised by anyone available.
And what was that? What life did that produce, Vaush? Like, was that a fun, tolerable time?
Available to raise you. And if you go back farther than that, what about the fucking Vikings, dude? You think they had fucking nuclear families? The farther back you go, the less we had this bullshit one parent, one father, one mother shit. The further back you go, the more you have collective child raising, the more you have communal child.
Oh, and what did those children grow up to be like, Vaush? They were Vikings? Oh, conquering warlords. Oh, okay, wonderful.
Raising. It takes a village to raise a child. That's the healthiest way for children to be
Right, to pull them away from their parents and then put them up for adoption and make sure that people who aren't related to them take care of them.
For children to be raised.
I know. I might be stretching his position here on this.
What we do right now is isolating, it's antisocial, it's alienating, it ill-equips our children to engage with others fairly and reasonably, which is why so many like single child kids end up being a little fucking weird because they didn't get enough socializing time. It's why it's recommended that parents send their kids to daycare as early as possible to get them familiar with socialization, which humans have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years and only
Yeah, but you don't have to have daycare to do that.
recently have stopped doing. Yeah, all of this myth that like one man, one woman's the ideal thing to raise the children, pushed by propagandistic fucking Protestants.
So no, what you do need is two parents, two reliable parents, two people that we can look up to as either mom or dad in terms of their figures. You don't need, you're right, you don't need a woman and a man, right? You do need a very healthy relationship, and you do need two very committed parents. And having a revolving door of parents, Vaush, is not healthy for these kids.
Okay? In America. Protestants 500 years ago weren't doing this shit. It's modern tradcon bullshit. Fuck it.
Which I do. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population.
Are you gonna ban my pornography?
Well, this question ignores federalism, for one.
What?
It ignores the wills of local populations.
No, it doesn't. They're asking you. What the fuck do you mean? They're asking you.
He means, when he says federalism, he's conceptualizing this question as a matter of devolution.
Jesus Christ.
So should it be illegal federally? Should it be illegal at the state level? Should it be illegal at the municipal level? Should towns effectively be able to pass their laws in this regard? I mean, again, he's reading into this question quite a bit more than he should be. But that's all we're talking about here.
This question could be like, do you think porn should be illegal? And he'd be like, well, you have to take into consideration state law.
It ignores the type of pornography, some of which is truly obscene, and
I think we're just talking about pornography in general. Like, just general...
True, fair. Beheadings are probably not something we're talking about. Child porn is probably not what we're talking about here.
Pornography. Not like fucking child porn. It says consenting adults. What do you mean by obscene? Do you mean anal? True. True.
Would jail people for it on the federal level as recently as 10 or 11 years ago. So
he means double anal. He's okay with one penis in the ass, but when they do the thing where two penises both go in the ass at the same time, and they just kind of like slip next to each other, he's not okay with that. And frankly, just from what I've said, it doesn't look particularly comfortable for anybody involved. But if you guys enjoy it, listen, I think that should be legal, okay?
So I would have to disagree with that. Not strongly disagree,
Thank you.
But disagree. What goes on in that?
Again, describing to Michael Knowles the worst possible of motivations. And he comes up with the exact answer.
The private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state.
True.
I don't know what's going on in there. Is the guy like smacking the lady around and tying her up and putting cigarettes out on her forehead? Because then I think it...
Consenting adults. Consenting adult. You are so stupid.
No, he's just reading into the question way too much, Vaush. Like, should adults consent should adults be allowed to consent to a thing that is definitely going to kill them? I don't know. Like, I could see an argument. I can see an argument for saying consenting adults shouldn't be allowed to do a thing in the bedroom that is definitely going to kill them.
Consenting! Do you know what these words mean? He doesn't. He doesn't know what consenting means.
Again, ascribing the worst possible of motivations here.
Which might bode well for previous relationships he's had.
I like smacking the lady around and tying her up and putting cigarettes out on her forehead, because then I think it is the business of everybody.
Remember, too, that within the context of this conversation, Michael Knowles is a troll. Like, he never takes these things seriously, and anytime he engages in these types of conversations, understand, he's a gigantic troll.
Some people say you can't legislate morality. All laws legislate moralities.
That is true. That is a phrase that I really don't like. When people say you can't legislate morality, law is literally codified morality. Every law is just an attempt to try to impose some kind of moral reality. Still think people should be able to do what they want in the bedroom as long as it's all consensual and fine above board, you know?
So I disagree with that. No one can feel naturally homosexual. I think people can probably feel naturally homosexual. Now, what you do at that point is probably a question for your religious point of view or your moral or ethical point of view, but I'm sure there are natural longings. These days...
Oh yeah, it is generally the case that conservatives don't understand consent. Conservatives don't really understand anything other than power, so to them, if you...
Says the guy who builds his entire worldview on power dynamics.
You can have sex, like that's that, you know? The idea of like a sort of reciprocal awareness of what everyone in the situation wants is like their mind doesn't even go to that. Yep. Who was it? Was it Glenn Beck or was it Sean Hannity? Who was it who said the one magic word that explains everything the left believes in is consent? If you consent to it, then you can do whatever you want to each other.
I actually disagree with that position. I would say that the left really doesn't like consent. Like really, really doesn't like consent. I would say that, you know, the consent between a gun shop, a gun store owner, right, and that transaction that he's making with the person that's buying the gun, right, like they don't like that. They don't want consent there, right? Like I would say when somebody's buying fatty foods and shitty, gross, disgusting foods at McDonald's, they don't like that consensual transaction, no.
Which one of them? Was it Limbaugh? It was Rush Limbaugh. Gotcha. Yeah. But he said it like it was crazy or incredulous. It's this? Wait.
Which funny, by the way, Vaush, if you take this to its logical end, you're in a libertarian worldview. So welcome to the world of the libertarian. Glad to have you. Give in to the dark side.
How'd you find it that quickly?
Okay, now to this story on hypocrisy. And I know we're going to get to people on the phones. You're chomping at the bit out there to get in on this. I know you are, and we're going to come to you right after the upcoming break. But, you know, we and I talk here about hypocrisy all the time, and we...
Time out. This is from Media Matters. Okay, so Rush Limbaugh says a lot of dumb shit. Like, genuinely says a lot of dumb shit. And I don't listen to his show because sometimes he's funny, right? And it's talk radio, so we're not going to get exactly the same thing every day. It's not going to be the same 25 or so songs that you're going to hear every single day. And, you know, when it comes to talk radio, there's really not much in terms of options here. So I wind up listening to Rush every once in a while. And not anymore, obviously, because he's dead. But, yeah, no. Rush says a lot of dumb shit. So it's entirely plausible that that this is real. But Media Matters is famous for cutting the shit out of these clips and uploading them completely with parts moved around, with shit removed, and like edited to death. So it sounds like they're saying something they actually never said anything close to. Now, again, Rush says a lot of dumb shit, a lot of really dumb shit. So it's possible, in fact, plausible, that he actually said this. But this is coming from Media Matters, so beware.
We wring our hands and we express our frustration. How come hypocrisy never attaches itself to the Democrats, yet when it comes to Republicans, it's become a crime? Hypocrisy is a crime when Republicans are caught in it. And yet it never even attaches to Democrats.
Stop. You, Vaush, have said on your own channel you don't care about hypocrisy. You've said it. In fact, you said it so famously that Destiny on his own channel clipped it. And in a video about your politics, his editor included that clip.
So there's a piece here called The Ugly Stench of Hypocrisy by Michael J. Hurd, Ph.D. He's a Ph.D. in psychology, Living Resources Center. The most insightful thing I've read yet about the Donald Trump sex talk scandal is this. But let me give you some pull quotes here before. Well, no, I'll read the opening of the story and then get the pull quotes. This is actually from 3 days ago. It just took a while for our sources to come up with it, but we've got it.
This guy's like the most popular talk radio guy in the country, right? Is he still, or was there another guy who took over that position? Imagine listening to this shit on your way to and from work every day.
The most insightful thing I've read yet about the Donald Trump sex talk scandal is this.
I'll give Rush this. Rush tends to be all over the goddamn place all the time.
How ironic, then, that a culture which rejects moral standards, and make no bones, folks, we do. Standards, moral standards. You stand up for moral standards, you're going to be mocked and laughed out of the room. They're going to call you a prude. They're going to call you a Victorian. They're going to call you an old fuddy-duddy, an old fogey, and they're going to claim you want to deny people having a good time. So, a culture which rejects moral standards. In other words, anything goes. You know what the magic word? The only thing that matters in American sexual mores today is one thing. You can do anything. The left will promote and understand and tolerate anything as long as there is one element. Do you know what it is? consent.
Yeah.
If there is consent on both or all three or all four, however many are involved in the sex act, it's perfectly fine, whatever it is. But if the left ever senses and smells that there's no consent in part of the equation, then here come the rape police.
Yes. The rape police.
But consent.
Also known as the regular police. This guy probably doesn't believe rape is a thing.
Is the...
No, again, here comes more gaslighting and imputing him with the worst possible motivations.
Magic key to the left.
Very nice. Anyway, yeah, that pretty much describes like every conservative's position on. He's probably a fan of spousal rape. Dude, didn't Dennis Prager literally write like multiple essays and videos and shit on how spousal rape is?
So now we're going from Russia's positions to describing Russia's positions with someone else's positions. No, Russia's actually talked about this at length. He doesn't believe in that at all. He is not a fan of what is actual marital rape. He's not a fan of that. Having some sort of generic moral standard where the whole idea of getting married is that, yeah, of course you want to have sex with this person, right? Like abolishing that, like having a wife say to a husband, we're never having sex again the moment they get married. I mean, that's kind of engaging in bad faith when you actually take your vows. Like ostensibly you're going to have sex after you get married, right? Like ostensibly for a lot of people, the rationale for getting married is to establish a relationship where you can have sex. Like, So there is a left wing view of marital rape that is just not rape, but actual rape where like husband comes home, drunk or whatever, and throws the wife on the bed and she screams and cries and says no the whole time. No, he totally believes that exists.
Isn't really a
He's
thing.
talked about it at length.
These people are these people's motivations are written pretty clear on the sides of their of their shafts,
Openness about sex has gone too far. Strongly agree. I just read a New York City sex guide to surviving the coronavirus pandemic, and it was the filthiest document I've read.
See the smile. Not taking this all that seriously.
Damn, dude. Stay mad. I don't give a fuck. Quit being...
Really? You don't want me to show... Vaush, I can come to your apartment and I can show videos of me dumping on your wife. Actually, he's not married, but I can show videos of me taking a dump on your mom's chest, right? Somewhere something about consent.
Being such a fucking snowflake. Why'd you read it then? If you don't like it, don't read it. Nobody forced you to read it. I'm sorry.
Right, there's nothing that grosses you out, Vaush? Because there's some stuff that grosses me out. I think there's some stuff that grosses everybody out. It's called taste, right? I'm sure there are foods that you don't like, Vaush. It's called taste.
Were you forced to read it by the state?
Probably years. So yeah, it's gone too far.
Wait, hold on. I'm really curious what this guy thinks is dirty. Hold on.
A New York City...
He's a Catholic. He has a very low standard for what's dirty, I guarantee you. But who the fuck cares? Who cares? You're the person that says consent in the bedroom is, yeah, that's all that matters, right? In the bedroom? Okay, well, his idea of freaky deaky is not going to be your idea of freaky deaky because that's how he conceives of freaky deaky. And that's the idea of freaky deaky he's willing to consent to. Something about consent, Vaush?
The sex guide to surviving the coronavirus.
Hold on. New York City sex guide surviving the coronavirus.
So don't care.
Is this safer sex and COVID-19? Okay, wait. New York City's official guide. This is from BuzzFeed News, so this seems... New York City issued an advisory for residents on best practices for sex during the coronavirus outbreak and has provided some much-needed guidance and humor. Okay, let's see. Encourages masturbation, says don't have sex with anyone outside of your household. Halt dating and hookups. Wait, is this it? This is... Wait, hold on. Okay, hold on. Here it is. This doesn't have, like, pictures or whatever. This is what we're talking about right here? This... Warnings on COVID-19. Have sex only with people close to you. You should limit close contact, including sex with anyone outside of your household. This is what...
Yeah, he's a prude.
This is what this guy...
Vaush, some people are prudes. Who the hell cares?
If two is company, then three or more is definitely a crowd. Consistent sex partner. Pick larger, more open, more ventilated spaces. wear a face covering, avoid kiss.
So does he consent to his own personal tastes? Does Michael Knowles consent to his own conception of what is lewd? Is he allowed to consent to his own position in that matter, or must he adopt your position, Vaush?
Wait, I thought this would be great for Michael Knowles. Hold on. Get tested.
Oh my God, we're gonna speed this up because I just don't give a shit.
Rimming might spread the virus. Kissing can easily pass the virus. Make it a little kinky. Be creative with sexual positions and physical barriers like walls that allow sexual contact while preventing close face-to-face contact. Masturbate together. Condoms, dental dams should be used. Skip sex if you're not feeling well. This is it. Advocacy for glory holes and saying that kissing and rimming can spread COVID-19. That's it. That's the filthiest thing this guy has read in a long time. Jesus Christ.
Pandemic. It was the filthiest document I've read in probably years.
Are you really outraged about this, Vaush? Really? Dude, it's just a personal taste. He's a prude. Who cares?
An official NYC document, a bullet point list encouraging people to be safe during COVID-19. This guy's like fucking got his legs together while he's reading it. His wife comes in, he puts a pillow on his lap like, hey, dear.
So mature.
So yeah, is it gone too far? I tweeted it out and it got so much play they ended up deleting it. So I'm doing my part to turn back the tide.
Wait, I just saw it. That was on a government website. Wait, okay.
Sexual revolution. Let's see where I stand. Okay, so it's telling me all the different places.
Let's get it.
Stalin is the authority.
He predicted he'd be pretty far right and pretty authoritarian. I'm going to guess he's about where Margaret Thatcher is.
Libertarian left. I said Bernie Sanders. Gandhi is the libertarian left. Hitler is the authoritarian right. Thatcher is the authoritarian right. I like that the only one of these grids that they put two people into is Hitler and Margaret Thatcher. Like, okay, guys, cool.
Matt?
Everyone else, libertarian right.
No, he's smiling and laughing.
Is Milton Friedman. Libertarian left is Gandhi. Authoritarian left is Stalin. But then you got Hitler, and Margaret Thatcher.
Are you mad? I don't understand. Are you like mad about it?
Really? You're the one accusing him of being an idiot and a complete like ignoramus, right? You're the one that has accused him of being completely illiterate. He's laughing, smiling. He's not looking directly at the camera. Oh, does he look mad, or does he think it's just silly?
You're probably about to be pretty close to her. I don't know. You're probably going to be like center authoritarian or something like that.
Thatcher.
Iron Lady. Okay. The Iron Cross Thatcher. And the Iron Lady.
Hold on. He's going to be +3.
I am, as I predicted,
+1.5, +3.5. Okay. Very authoritarian, kind of right.
Slightly on the authoritarian right. 1.5 to the right on economics. I scored a 3.69 to authoritarian. So I'm almost exactly where I predicted I would be.
I have to tell you again, with how biased this test is towards lib left, you have to try really fucking hard to go that far into auth right.
Despite all of their extreme.
You have to definitely overread the test. Yes. Yeah, he read into this test way too much. That's true.
Extremely dumb questions.
Despite all the questions he couldn't understand.
A lot of these questions, Vaush, were legitimately incredibly dumb.
And thought that he was outsmarting by demonstrating.
Oh my God, he's outsmarting him again. No, he's just overthinking them.
All right, that's enough of this shit, dude. This guy.
Agreed. That's enough of this shit. Like, I am so sorry. I am so sorry you guys had to put up with all this. Like, I can't wait. It's like it's 10:30 at night on a Friday night. So you know what? I'm gonna go out and get a beer, and you guys probably should too. Thanks for sticking with me. We'll have more videos coming up. Good night, everyone.